Nobody warns you that a biblical world can be run by whispers. Not armies, not kings, not even the weather. Whispers. One woman steals babies in the night. One paints her eyes while a kingdom cracks like old plaster. One can destroy your future with a sleepy little haircut, and one glides into dinner already carrying the mood of an execution. Hey guys, tonight we begin with the forbidden women of the Bible, Lilith and Jezebel and Delilah and Salome. We're stepping into a world of hot stone, smoky lamps, crowded courtyards, and rumors so vicious people lower their voices just to say a name. You're going to feel what it was like to live where beauty could look like danger, where desire came with consequences, and where one woman in the wrong room could ruin everybody's evening. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the biblical world. The good news, you are technically alive. The bad news, everything around you smells like heat, oil, feet, damp wool, and a goat that has made truly reckless choices. You open your eyes to a room that feels less like a bedroom and more like a storage accident with spiritual tension. The walls are mud brick. The floor is packed dirt. Your bedding is straw under a woven mat, plus one blanket with the texture of an old potato sack and the scent profile of smoke, sweat, and disappointment. The lamp burned low hours ago, but the smell stayed behind. Burnt olive oil hangs in the air like a stubborn houseguest. Something scratched in the corner all night. You never saw it, which somehow makes it worse. Outside, morning has already started shouting. A donkey is braying like it has been personally betrayed by creation. Someone in the courtyard is arguing before breakfast, which means this is either a special occasion or just another day. You sit up and dust immediately sticks to your skin. Your hair has spent the night becoming a legal problem. Your mouth tastes like old bread and sleep. Then the sounds come into focus. Clay jars knocking together, sandals scraping stone, a child crying. Another child crying louder because apparently this is now a competition. And underneath all that, the murmur. The low, delicious, nervous murmur of people talking about women they do not trust. Not ordinary women. Not your neighbor who sells onions and judges everyone's laundry. Worse, women whose names move through a town like smoke under a door. You hear one of them before you even leave the room. A mother with a baby tied against her chest mutters a prayer and touches a little charm hanging near the doorway. She says the name softly, the way people speak when they don't want the dark to hear them listening. Lilith. That name lands in the room and nobody laughs. Not even the person who laughs at everything, especially not that guy. Because night here is not peaceful. Night is drafty. Night is full of fevers, bad dreams, crying infants, and doors that do not quite close. Night is lying awake on your straw pallet while the lamp spits smoke, and every gust of desert air feels rude on a supernatural level. You step into the courtyard, and the whole place hits you at once. Warm stone underfoot, oven heat rising from the bread fire. Animal smells so strong it seems to have a texture. Chickens wandering around with the confidence of tax collectors. There are people everywhere. Cousins, Servants, traders, children, old women with folded arms and eyes like polished nails. Everybody is carrying something. Water jars, baskets, gossip, grudges. A woman passes with kohl dark around her eyes, bracelets softly clicking at her wrists. Heads turn, not because she has done anything. Not yet. But because in a place like this, a painted face can mean luxury, arrogance, seduction, foreignness, trouble, or all four before noon. And just like that, another name slips through the crowd. Jezebel. People don't say it normally. They say it the way you'd say gas leak in a crowded kitchen. Quietly, but with urgency. You can almost feel the room reorganize around the word. You follow the sound of the market waking up. It is chaos with figs. Sellers shout over one another. Flies hover over dates, honey, fish, and whatever meat is pretending to be fresh. Somewhere incense is burning, trying its best, and losing badly to the scent of sweat and livestock. A man elbows past you carrying a basket of dyed cloth. Another drags a goat that does not agree with the itinerary. The goat wins 2 out of 3 rounds. Above all of it hangs that strange biblical mix of the sacred and the sticky. One minute, someone is blessing the day. The next minute, a child is peeing beside a wall while 2 aunties debate whether a queen deserved what she got. And queens in this world are not soft furniture. They are sharp objects in expensive fabric. You hear of one before you ever see a palace. A woman at a doorway leans in and says that she painted her eyes even at the end, painted them carefully while disaster climbed the stairs. That gets a reaction, a small gasp, a little thrill, a bit of scandal with breakfast. You don't know her yet, but you can feel her silhouette forming in the minds around you. Perfume over panic, jewels in a city that smells like draft animals, hair arranged while men outside are deciding who gets thrown from where. Jezebel again, now brighter, harder, impossible to ignore. By afternoon, the heat starts pressing down like a hand on the back of your neck. Shade becomes a form of wealth. Everyone is sticky. Everyone is tired. This is when bad decisions get made and remembered forever. You find yourself in another household, this one quieter though not safer. Low table, woven bedding, a jar in the corner, a man stretched out and heavy with sleep, snoring with the confidence of someone who has never once read a room correctly. Across from him sits a woman with soft hands and a patient face. She asks questions in a voice so gentle it should come with a warning label. Delilah. The whole room feels wrong. Not loud wrong, soft wrong. The kind that creeps up on you in slippers. There's money somewhere nearby. You can almost smell it, metallic and tempting. There's also betrayal, which has no smell at all until it is suddenly the strongest thing in the room. A lock of hair falls, then another. Tiny sounds, barely more than the whisper of thread being cut, and somehow that is more terrifying than swords, shouting, or a collapsing wall. Because this world loves dramatic violence, yes, but it also adores the quiet kind, the kind that happens in your lap while everyone thinks the hero is napping. And then evening comes, because apparently ancient life wasn't exhausting enough without formal banquets. Torches flare, platters arrive, roasted meat sweats under the lights, wine sloshes, men laugh too loudly. The whole hall smells like grease, spiced oil, and political insecurity. This is where another name waits, young and polished and terrible for the mood. Salome. She enters a room full of powerful men already making poor decisions with their chins lifted. You can feel the attention tighten as she moves. You can feel the reckless promise hanging in the air before it is spoken. And you can feel, with that awful little drop in your stomach, the dessert is not going to save this evening. So this is the world you've woken into. Lamps smoking, babies crying, courtyards buzzing, palaces preening, men boasting, women being watched so hard it could leave bruises. And in the middle of it all are names passed from mouth to mouth like contraband. Lilith in the night wind, Jezebel at the window, Delilah beside the sleeping strongman, Salome at the banquet. You hear them, and the room changes. So stay in the courtyard a little longer. Keep close to the lamplight. And whatever you do, when someone leans in to whisper one of those names, don't pretend you're not listening. First, you survive the night, or at least you try to. You are not in a palace now. No carved cedar, no polished ivory, no servants gliding around with trays of figs and opinions. You are in a room made of mud brick that sweats when it is hot, cracks when it is dry, and does absolutely nothing to stop a draft with bad intentions. The door does not shut properly. Of course it does not. A rag hangs over the opening and flaps every time the wind pushes through, which is often because the whole place feels like it was designed by someone who had heard of walls but objected to the concept. The floor is packed earth. The bed is a straw pallet with a blanket so scratchy it feels personal. Every time you shift, something pokes you. Possibly straw, possibly a twig, possibly a beetle with a dream. And the baby will not stop crying, not fussing, not whimpering. Crying with that thin, exhausted, furious sound babies make when they have committed fully to ruining everybody's night. The mother sits hunched on the pallet, hair stuck to her face, tunic wrinkled, eyes hollow from weeks of broken sleep. She has the look of a person who has not had one uninterrupted thought since labor began. The oil lamp on the shelf smokes like it resents being alive. Its little flame gives off more drama than light. The room wavers in ambers and grey. Shadows jerk on the wall. Every basket, every hanging cloth, every corner full of stored grain looks briefly like a crouching person, then not a person, then maybe a person again. Very comforting. Exactly what you want at midnight. The child shrieks harder. The mother mutters a prayer under her breath and adjusts the swaddling. Her hands are quick but tired. She has done this 20 times tonight already, and still the little body writhes and cries and kicks against the wrapping like a prisoner filing an official complaint. An older woman crouches nearby. She smells of wool, old olive oil, and smoke from 100 cooking fires. She puts one hand on the mother's shoulder and one on the baby's chest. Her voice stays low, not soothing exactly, more like someone negotiating with a storm. Quiet now, quiet, little one, quiet. The room does not quiet. Outside, a dog starts barking. Somewhere farther off, another dog answers, because ancient villages apparently ran on the principle that no one should ever sleep if it can be helped. A donkey gives one hideous, offended bray. Wind scrapes dust against the wall. The lamp coughs another ribbon of smoke into the room, and everybody breathes it because there are no better options. You look up and see the amulet. It hangs beside the doorway on a bit of cord, a small piece of metal or clay scratched with signs and names. Another one is tied near the bed. Another has been tucked into the baby's wrappings. You notice them now because once you see one, you start seeing them everywhere. Tiny defenses, little dangling no thank yous to whatever moves in darkness. Nobody put them there for decoration. This is not rustic charm. This is not some cute homemade wall accent. This is fear with a string through it. The mother glances at the doorway every time the cloth stirs. You feel it too. Every draft seems pointed. Every movement of air feels like somebody entering uninvited. The old woman spits lightly to one side, makes a quick sign with her fingers, and mutters another name under her breath. A protective name. An angry name. The kind of name you say at the dark like you're filing a complaint with management. Because the dark has residents. Everybody knows this. Not officially. Not in a tidy, organized, respectable way. No one stands in daylight by the well saying, "Yes, absolutely, there is a female night thing hovering around my house, and I hate her." But once sunset drops and the cooking fires burn low, and babies start coughing, and mothers start listening for changes in breathing, all that polite confidence gets very flimsy. Then people talk. Not loudly, never loudly. They lower their voices and mention a name that passes through the room like another draft. Lilith. Not as a queen, not as a woman in a doorway, not even as a person, really. More like a bad possibility with hair. More like a rumor the wind can carry. You don't meet Lilith first in a grand story. You meet her in this room. In the exhausted stare of a mother who has already buried one child. In the hand that reaches, almost without thinking, to touch the amulet. In the way everybody keeps checking whether the baby is still breathing. That is where she lives, in the terrible little gap between sleep and panic. The child finally pauses to suck in a breath. For one brief, holy second, there is silence. Everyone freezes. The mother leans down so fast it is almost a lunge, putting her ear near the tiny mouth. The old woman's hand grips her wrist. You can feel the whole room listening. The lamp sputters. Dust drifts. Outside, a goat knocks something over and sounds innocent about it. Then the baby cries again. The mother actually laughs. Not because anything is funny. More because her nerves have gone so tight they have snapped into that strange place where laughter and crying share a wall. She presses her forehead to the baby's blanket and lets out one rough breath. Good, the older woman whispers. Good. Loud is good. Loud is alive. That is the arithmetic here. A crying child is miserable, but a quiet child at the wrong moment can make a woman's blood turn to ice. So you pace, you rock, you sing until your throat dries out. You jiggle a feverish little body in your arms while your own back screams at you. You pray for sleep and then get frightened when sleep actually comes. Because night is not restful here. Night is a workplace. Night is inventory. Counting children, counting breaths, counting until dawn like a prisoner scratching marks into stone. Every cough matters. Every whimper matters. Every strange stillness is a cliff edge. And over all of it hangs the possibility of her. Lilith in the night air. Maybe she's a demon. Maybe she is a wandering spirit. Maybe she is a thing with wings. Maybe she has long hair and sharp nails and eyes that catch light in the doorway. Maybe she rides the wind in from the wilderness. Maybe she crouches on roofs. Maybe she slips through cracks no bigger than a thumb. Nobody can quite agree. That does not help. One woman swears her cousin saw a shape at the window just before her son took sick. Another insists Lilith lurks near wells after sunset, waiting for the careless and the half asleep. Someone else heard she strangles babies in their cradles. Another says she seduces men in dreams and leaves them weak and dazed by morning, waking up sticky, ashamed, and deeply uninterested in discussing details before breakfast. So now the night is not only dark, it is crowded. The old woman gets up and checks the doorway again. She tucks the cloth tighter, though it accomplishes almost nothing. The wind still finds its way in, because wind is basically the ancient world's most determined houseguest. It arrives uninvited, touches everything, and leaves dirt behind. The mother shifts the baby to her other arm. You can smell milk gone sour on her tunic. Sweat has dried under her collar and formed that faint, salty smell of a body being used far beyond its preferred operating range. Her hair has been braided, then slept on, then grabbed at, and now half of it is escaping around her face. She looks about 14 and 100 at the same time. An iron knife lies near the pillow, not for cutting bread, for protection. People put iron near beds, near mothers, near infants. A knife under the mattress, a nail in the wall, a blade near the threshold. Iron is supposed to help. Why? Because someone heard it does. Because their grandmother did it. Because when fear sits on your chest at 2 a.m, you become very open-minded about household objects. The baby starts rooting for milk again. The mother untangles her clothing and nurses him, wincing as he latches. The old woman turns the lamp wick lower. Smoke thickens anyway. Your eyes sting. The room smells of lamp oil, damp wool, stale bread, old ashes, bodily fluids, and that sweet sour milk smell that clings to any place where a baby lives. It is intimate in the worst possible way. There is no privacy. There is only survival with witnesses. The grandmother begins reciting names. Not random names, protective ones. Names of angels, names carried in whispers, names scratched into bits of metal and hung over sleeping infants like tiny heavenly security guards. She says them firmly, as if speaking to someone outside the room. Not welcome. Move along. Try the next house. You see these names everywhere now. On little plaques tucked into walls, on bowls, on strips of parchment folded into leather cases, on amulets worn by women who have delivered too many babies and buried too many more. Men wear them too, though they talk tougher about it in daylight. At night, they touch them just the same, because infant death is common enough to have furniture built around it. That is the horrible fact under everything. No one says it with a dramatic gasp. No one acts surprised. Babies die. Mothers die. Women bleed too long after labor and turn pale and cold, while everyone around them starts using the voice people use when they know panic is useless. Fevers arrive. Bellies swell. Tiny lungs fail. A child who seemed merely fussy at dusk is dead by morning. And you need somewhere to put that terror. So a name forms around it. Lilith. She becomes the hand behind the crib, the draft at the door, the pressure in the room when everybody is trying not to think the worst. She is what people say when the world feels too arbitrary and too cruel to name directly. Much easier, in a strange way, to imagine a hunter in the dark than to accept that a baby can simply stop breathing, because bodies are fragile, and life in the ancient world is one long health code violation. There are no sterile nurseries here. There are flies. There is smoke. There is animal hair drifting in on the air. There are hands that have kneaded dough, cleaned fish, hauled water, and wiped a toddler's backside, all before touching the newborn. There is a shared room, shared bedding, shared everything. There are winter drafts and summer heat, and water that can make you sick if it looks at you wrong. And still people go on. They wash the infant when they can. They swaddle tightly. They sing old songs. They burn herbs. They tie charms. They call in healers. They whisper blessings over soft heads that smell like milk and warm bread and the frightening newness of human life. The mother hums now. It is not a pretty sound. She is too tired for pretty. The melody wobbles. Her voice catches. But the baby slows. His crying drops to angry snuffles, then little hitching breaths. You feel the whole room unclench by 1 degree. Not relaxed, never relaxed, just less close to screaming. The old woman sits again and rubs her knees. Those knees have seen things. They crack like old wood when she lowers herself. She mutters that the child has strong lungs, which is the sort of compliment available at this hour. Nobody is discussing his bright future. Everybody is focused on him making it to sunrise. Outside, the village settles unevenly. A man coughs in the next house over, a deep, wet cough that sounds like it should have its own blanket. Someone closes a gate. Somewhere a couple argues in tired whispers that are somehow more intense than shouting. A jar breaks, then silence. Then a chicken, confused by moonlight or stupidity, makes one lonely noise and gives up. The world beyond the walls is black and wide. Out there, past the last houses, the land opens into scrub and rock and thorn. Dry places, empty places. Places where things rustle and you do not go investigate because you are not a fool. The wilderness already has a reputation. It is where people get lost, where scavengers feed, where heat strips you down and night cold bites back. So of course, that is where people imagine Lilith belongs. In the waste places, in broken places, among ruins where nobody sane wants to sleep. You can almost see her there because everybody else can. Not clearly. That would ruin it. Fear likes blur. Fear prefers movement in the corner of your eye, a shape against moonlight, hair lifting in the wind. If someone ever gave you a proper portrait of the thing, half the power would vanish. But let it stay uncertain. Woman, bird, spirit, storm, and suddenly she can fit any disaster. A baby sickens. Lilith. A man wakes from a dream sweating and ashamed. Lilith. A mother sees a shape in lamplight after 3 nights without sleep. Absolutely Lilith. Sleep deprivation, by the way, is doing no one any favors. By the 3rd or 4th night with a newborn, the mind gets loose around the edges. Shadows move wrong. Ordinary sounds become coded threats. A hanging cloth becomes a face. A draft becomes fingers. A creak in the roof beams becomes footsteps. You are one bad night away from accusing a pile of laundry of malicious intent. And ancient bedrooms are basically haunted already. The walls sweat. The roof sheds dust. Mice audition in the corners. The lamp goes low and turns every ordinary object into a suspect. Your blanket smells faintly of sheep and strongly of your own existence. A chicken may be inside. There is always some chance of a chicken being inside. So, yes, the night starts to feel inhabited. The mother passes the baby to the old woman and stands, stretching her back with a grimace. Her ankles are swollen. Her face tightens as she presses a hand to her lower belly. Birth is over, technically, but her body has not received that memo. It is still sore, still leaking, still rearranging itself after being split open by life. She walks carefully to the water jar and takes a drink. Then she glances at the infant and immediately comes back. She can't help it. Every mother in this village knows that magnetic panic. You leave the child for 1 heartbeat and your mind invents 17 disasters. He has stopped breathing. He has rolled somehow, though he cannot roll. The lamp has fallen. A lizard has entered with criminal motives. The night itself has leaned in too close. She reaches the pallet and puts her hand on the baby's chest. still rising, still falling. Good. You start to understand how Lilith spreads, not by decrees, not by formal announcements, not by anybody setting up a little booth in the marketplace with brochures about nocturnal female entities. She spreads because women talk to each other while grinding grain, while washing cloth, while bringing bread to a neighbor who has just delivered. They trade remedies and warnings. Hang the amulet higher. Don't leave the child alone before the naming. Keep the lamp lit. Put iron by the bed. Say these names. Do not say her name too much. Do not whistle at night. Do not open the door if you hear scratching. Do not let anyone praise the baby too openly. Envy travels, so the fear gets texture, rules, rituals, a whole nighttime etiquette built around not attracting whatever listens in the dark. The old woman rocks the baby and tells a story in fragments about a woman from another village, pretty, foolish, too confident by half. She laughed at charms, said she needed no amulets, said God was enough. Bold statement for someone sleeping in a room where the wind comes through the wall. Her baby was healthy at dusk. By dawn, the child was cold. No one in the room argues. It is not the time. Maybe the baby had a fever. Maybe there was some sickness no one could see. Maybe the story has been embellished so many times it now arrives wearing jewelry. Doesn't matter. The point lands where it is meant to. Respect the dark. Do not get clever after sundown. The lamp flame gutters sharply. All three of you look at it at once. Ridiculous. But there it is. The old woman reaches to shield it with her palm and adds oil with the care of someone handling explosives. If the lamp goes out, the room won't become more dangerous in any practical sense, but in every emotional sense. Catastrophic. A working lamp is proof that the household still has a vote. Light, however poor, feels like resistance. The baby sleeps at last. At least you think he does. His face loosens, his fists uncurl, his little mouth opens in a soft, damp oval. The old woman lowers him onto the pallet with such exquisite care, you'd think she was setting down a bowl filled to the rim with everyone's sanity. The mother crouches beside him, not blinking. No one trusts this piece. Not yet. She lays 2 fingers beneath his nose, waits, feels breath. Good. Again. Good. You could build an entire religion out of the relief on her face. Small, shaky, immediate. A miracle measured in warm air on the skin. Then she ties the amulet tighter. Not because the child is in danger now, because he is quiet now. That is when fear gets loud again. Noise at least gives you something to respond to. Silence hands your imagination the wheel and watches the crash. So she checks the wrappings, checks the lamp, checks the doorway, checks the knife by the pillow, checks the baby again, and only then allows herself to sit. The old woman rubs oil on the mother's wrists. It smells green and bitter, with a little resin mixed in. Protective? Maybe medicinal, maybe symbolic, maybe all three. Ancient people did not always separate medicine, prayer, and desperation into neat categories. Why would they? If your choices are herb, blessing, iron, and hope, you use the full starter pack. You hear footsteps outside, slow ones. Everyone in the room goes still. There is no knock, just the soft crunch of sand and grit by the threshold, then a pause. The cloth over the doorway stirs. The lamp throws one long shadow up the wall. The mother's mouth tightens. The old woman grips the knife so casually it becomes alarming. Then a voice whispers from outside. Only the father. He has been with the animals, or with a neighbor, or keeping watch, or simply unable to sleep anywhere else, because worry has turned him into a pacing shape in the dark. He steps in, ducking his head, bringing cold air, dust, and the smell of outside with him. Leather, sweat, night wind, sheep. He looks at the baby before he looks at his wife. Still breathing? That is the first question. Not spoken. His eyes ask it for him. She nods. His shoulders drop by an inch. That is marital intimacy in this room. No speeches, no dramatic reunion. Just two people looking at a sleeping infant as if the child has personally negotiated a ceasefire. The father touches the amulet at the doorway when he enters. He does it quickly, almost embarrassed, like a man pretending he is merely adjusting a cord. Sure you are. He sits by the wall and chews a scrap of dried fig. He offers some to the older woman. She takes it. The mother declines because she is too tired to chew. The room goes quiet except for the lamp and the baby's faint little snorts. Now that the child sleeps, the stories come. They always do. The father says a man in the next village heard flapping above his roof last new moon. Not owl flapping, bigger, wrong somehow. The old woman says she knew a woman who woke and felt weight on her chest, as if somebody sat on her while she slept. Could not move, could not cry out. By morning she was bruised and half mad with fear. The mother says nothing, but her hand goes to her own chest. You know that feeling too, or something like it. That terrible half-waking trap where the body won't answer, where a dream leaks into the room and you swear something is standing there. Ancient people experience that and, understandably, do not shrug it off as a quirky neurological event. They give it a face, a name, a whole personality disorder, Lilith. Now she is not only after infants. She's in the dreams of men, in the breathless terror of sleepers pinned beneath invisible weight, in the sticky shame of emissions no one ordered and everyone resents. A man wakes from a vivid dream involving a beautiful stranger, and suddenly his body has betrayed him in deeply inconvenient fashion. He can either say, well, the sleeping mind is a strange place, or he can say, a night demon seduced me. One of those explanations preserves dignity a little better. So she grows. Not cleaner, bigger. She becomes a collector of all the things people hate not controlling. Desire, death, childbirth, sleep, blood. The body doing bizarre things without consulting you first. She is the nightmare filing cabinet. Open any drawer of nighttime dread, and there she is, somehow already inside. The father keeps his voice low because saying her name too freely feels unwise. The old woman says there are places where people paint protective figures on the walls. The mother says she heard some women do not cut a boy's hair for a certain number of days. Someone else once swore red thread helps. Another swore salt helps. Another swore never to leave water uncovered overnight. Why? Because apparently darkness can contaminate anything if given the chance. You can hear, under all of this, the rattle of human helplessness. A village has no antibiotics, no incubators, no decent insulation, no clue why one infant thrives and another fails. So, what do? You make habits. You make warnings. You make a female thing in the darkness and say, there, that is the enemy. Hang something by the bed. Speak these names. Stay awake. Watch the baby. Keep the lamp burning. It does not solve the terror, but it gives the terror handles. Hours crawl. The father's head droops toward sleep, then jerks up again. The old woman finally lies down near the doorway, knife within reach, because apparently this is the bedtime setup, and no one finds that strange. The mother sits upright against the wall with the baby beside her hand. She is trying not to sleep too deeply. Every few breaths she leans down and checks him again. The lamp shrinks lower. Its smell gets thicker as the oil runs down. Soot stains creep above it on the wall, black fingers reaching toward the roof beams. You watch the mother's face in that weak light. Tired, yes. Frightened, yes. But stubborn too. That ancient, ordinary stubbornness of women who have done impossible things and then been expected to keep going before breakfast. This is where Lilith is strongest, not in some dramatic desert apparition. Here, in the room where exhaustion turns every draft into a threat. In the hour before dawn, when the body is weakest and the mind is least reliable. In the awful knowledge that love makes you vulnerable, because now there is something in the room you cannot bear to lose. The village knows dawn will come. That is not the same as trusting the night. Some households have lost too much for that. Some mothers can still tell you the exact weight of a child they carried to burial. Some fathers have dug graves so small it changed the shape of their hands forever. After that, of course you hang amulets. Of course you mutter names at the dark. Of course you blame the wind if you need to. There is mercy in naming dread. The baby stirs and lets out one sharp cry. Everyone startles like the room has been struck. Then comes the relief again, ridiculous and immediate. The mother presses her hand to her face and laughs once through her nose. The father smiles with all the collapse of a man who has been braced for disaster too long. The old woman, already half asleep, mutters, "Good. Annoy us, keep annoying us." Excellent family motto, honestly. The child settles. The night thins very slightly. Not brighter yet, but less absolute. You can feel the world preparing to turn. A rooster tries out a few uncertain sounds. Someone nearby is already stirring ashes for the morning fire. The edge of the doorway cloth begins to show shape rather than just darkness. Dawn is still coming from far away, but it has sent word ahead. And with that, Lilith begins to retreat. Not because anyone proved anything. Not because the amulet flashed and drove her off in a theatrical burst of special effects. Just because morning has always been rude to creatures of night. Daylight makes fear look smaller, or at least busier. Once the sun is up, there is bread to bake, water to haul, cloth to wash, dung to scrape, grain to grind, and neighbours to consult. Terror has less room to sprawl when chores start kicking the door. But she never goes far. You know that already. She lingers in the talk over the ovens, in the protective charms newly tied around a cradle, in the old warning not to leave a newborn alone, in the whispered memory of a child who did not make it, in every mother's hand drifting over and over to check the rise and fall of a tiny chest. The room grows grey. The father's face comes into focus. So do the cracks in the wall, the bundles hanging from pegs, the water jar with a chip near the rim, the pile of laundry that looked like a demon 3 hours ago and is now once again just a pile of laundry with no criminal agenda. Morning is humiliating that way. It reveals how much of the night was fear-wearing furniture. The old woman sits up with a groan and rubs her neck. The mother has not really slept at all. Her eyes are red. Her mouth is dry. Her hair looks as though birds held a meeting in it. But the baby is warm. The baby breathes. The baby begins, with breathtaking ingratitude, to cry for food again. And that cry, in this room, sounds almost glorious. You survived the night. Or at least this one. The mother unties the amulet from the blanket and kisses it before hanging it again. The father lifts the doorcloth and lets morning air in. It smells of damp earth, ash, dung smoke, and bread starting somewhere nearby. Not pleasant exactly, but reassuring. Daytime has its own disgusting perfume, and at least you know where you stand with it. Outside, women are already moving through the lane with jars balanced on hips. A neighbor glances in and asks softly, "How was he in the night?" That is how these mornings begin. Not with grand philosophy, with that question. How was he in the night? And the answer matters. He cried, he slept, he coughed, he burned with fever, he startled, he fed well, he frightened us. He is still here. Each answer joins the others, house by house, courtyard by courtyard, making a map of survival and fear. And threaded through it all, just beneath ordinary talk, moves the same shadowy name, Lilith. Not fully seen, never fully gone. Part nightmare, part warning, part excuse, part grief with teeth. You feel her most in what people do to keep her away. In the extra lamp oil spent when oil is not cheap. In the charms scratched by tired hands. In the muttered prayers over cradles. In the knife under the mattress. In the mother who has not closed both eyes at once in days. In the father's embarrassed fingers touching an amulet on the door. That is her kingdom. Not a throne room. A nursery. Not triumph. Vigil. Now the daylight confidence starts to crack. Sometimes all the amulets stay on the wall. Sometimes the lamp burns all night. Sometimes the mother does everything right and the baby still goes quiet. That is why Lilith survives in memory. Because she gives shape to a loss too cruel and too common to leave unnamed. Because people need a face for the danger that enters the room when the room should be safest. Because a desert wind through a bad doorway feels easier to fight than the brutal randomness of little bodies failing. So she stays in the air above the cradle, in the old stories, in the muttered warnings, in the look people exchange when a child sleeps too long and too still. Morning can chase her back for a few hours. Work can drown her out. Sunlight can make everyone feel slightly foolish. But night always comes again, bringing its drafts, its creaks, its fevered dreams, its tiny, vulnerable sleepers. And somewhere beyond the last house, where the land breaks open into scrub and stone, the wind keeps moving through the dark as if it knows the way back. Dawn finally comes, and somehow the palace is even less restful than the nursery. The first thing you notice is the smell. Not one smell. A whole committee of smells, all arguing at once. Hot stone, lamp oil, old rushes, sweat trapped in linen, cedar chests, damp plaster, roasted meat from last night, and expensive perfume thrown over everything like a panicked host spraying air freshener in a bathroom disaster. It does not work. You step into Samaria half awake, and the city hits you in the face. Flies already have a work ethic. Donkeys are yelling like unpaid contractors. Merchants are setting up stalls in streets still slick with yesterday's garbage. And servants are sloshing out jars of water that briefly improve the dust before turning it into mud with ambitions. This is the capital, allegedly. The hilltop palace rises above it all with its polished stone, carved panels, guarded entrances, and flashes of ivory that catch morning light in a way clearly meant to make peasants feel poor, which is effective. It looks rich enough to offend God and several nearby kingdoms at once. And into this place comes Jezebel. You hear her before you really see her, because a royal arrival is never subtle. Hooves on stone, harness chains clinking, men shouting for room that nobody wants to give, wheels grinding, a trumpet blast so sharp it feels personal. Somewhere nearby, a baby starts crying, which feels like the most honest response available. People turn. Of course, they turn. A princess from Sidon is arriving, and Sidon does not do modest. Sidon exports purple dye, cedar, silver, sailors, luxury, and the kind of confidence that makes inland people grind their teeth. Coastal money has entered the chat, and everybody in Samaria knows it. You get your first look through dust and shoulders. She is not draped in local simplicity. Absolutely not. Jezebel arrives polished, oiled hair, fine linen, jewelry that catches light and keeps it. Attendants moving around her like nervous planets around a dangerous sun. She looks expensive from several paces away, the human version of imported goods nobody can afford, but everybody resents. And she knows people are looking. That is part of the insult. She does not enter like someone asking permission. She enters like someone accustomed to doors opening, incense burning, and lesser people hurrying themselves into back pain on her behalf. You can practically hear the city mutter, "Oh, excellent, a foreign queen, just what this powder keg needed." The streets tighten around her procession. Women in doorways squint. Men at stalls pause mid-haggle. Boys run alongside until soldiers bark them back. Old men fold their arms and give the look old men have been giving new political developments since the invention of disappointment. Nobody says welcome. You can feel the judgment moving through the crowd in little silent currents. Phoenician, outsider, idol worshipper, too painted, too rich, too sure of herself, too everything. She has not even unpacked her boxes yet, and already half the city has decided she personally invented all future problems. To be fair, Samaria is not exactly a calm place waiting to be gently improved. This kingdom has been built in a hurry and held together with taxes, military nerve, and the kind of diplomacy that usually smells like bribes. Omri built the city on a hill and called it strength. From below it looks strong enough. Thick walls, strategic position, a royal compound with enough carved luxury to make neighboring rulers feel underdressed. Inside, though, everything sweats. Officials hurry through corridors clutching tablets and messages, trying to look dignified while their tunics darken under the arms. Scribes crouch in corners with reed pens and sore backs. Guards stand at attention beside polished doors, pretending not to notice that everyone in power is one bad harvest away from hysteria. The palace itself is a masterpiece of royal overcompensation. Smooth plaster walls gleam in the lamplight. Ivory inlays shine from furniture, bed frames, and decorative panels that exist for no reason except to announce, yes, we had elephants turned into decor. Cedar beams darken the ceilings overhead. Bronze bowls glint. Colored textiles hang in folds soft enough to make common wool look like punishment. You touch none of it because you enjoy being alive. Servants pad over floors with silent urgency, carrying basins, folded garments, trays of figs, cups of wine, jars of oil, and messages that become less pleasant every 10 steps. Every corridor smells faintly of resin, ash, and whatever somebody with money thinks refinement smells like. Underneath it all, stubbornly, there is still the scent of bodies packed into stone rooms before sunrise. Luxury can only do so much. And there, at the center of it all, is Ahab. He is young enough to still seem unfinished. Not a fool exactly, but the sort of man who has spent enough time being obeyed that he has started mistaking desire for judgment. He wears royal linen and a beard carefully arranged to imply authority. He has the look of someone who enjoys comfort deeply and conflict not at all, which is a terrible hobby set for a king. He meets Jezebel with ceremony, hands washed, robes arranged, witnesses present. The formalities unfold with all the polished stiffness of a political merger disguised as romance. They stand before one another under carved beams while officials watch, priests hover, and everybody pretends this is about love instead of trade routes, alliances, military leverage, and keeping larger empires from chewing them up like stale bread. You could spread butter on the awkwardness. Ahab smiles in the practiced way of a man who knows he should be delighted. Jezebel smiles in the practiced way of a woman raised around power, ships, contracts, and gods with temples that actually make money. They look magnificent together. They also look like two people about to discover marriage is less fun when the bedding comes with diplomats. The wedding feasts drag on for days. Of course they do. Nothing says royal stability like mass catering. Oxen are slaughtered, sheep are roasted. Wine flows until the courtyard smells like grapes, vomit, and optimism. Musicians play until their fingers cramp. Dancers whirl. Courtiers laugh too loudly at jokes that were dead on arrival. The poor get scraps and rumours. From the outer court you watch platters move in and out under embroidered cloths. Spiced meats, honey cakes, figs split open and glistening, bowls of lentils rich with oil, flatbread stacked in steaming heaps. It is an impressive display, especially in a land where half the people have intimate experience with hunger and all the people have intimate experience with taxes. Resentment seasons everything. But now the marriage is sealed and the new queen is installed and the real work begins. Not the public work, the private kind, the daily, grinding, small humiliations of joining a house that would rather have your dowry than your presence. You wake before sunrise in the women's quarters to the scrape of sandals and the low hiss of servants lighting fresh lamps. The chamber is cool, but only for a minute. Soon the heat starts rising off the walls. The bed is broad, layered with woven covers and fine cushions, all very impressive, until you remember you still slept badly because politics do not snore quietly. Jezebel sits while women arrange her hair. It takes a while. Royal hair is an industry. Combs pass through perfumed black strands. Pins are sorted. Linen veils are folded and refolded. Small jars are opened, releasing sharp, sweet scents of myrrh and frankincense and floral oils that try valiantly to overpower the fact that several humans are already sweating in a small room. At some point, someone brings a polished bronze mirror. She studies her own face in warped reflection, and you can feel the calculation. Not vanity, exactly. Preparation. In Sidon, in Tyre, in the long Phoenician cities with their harbours and trade, a royal daughter learns quickly that appearance is not decoration. It is armour, it is language, it is a warning label in coal. And Samaria hates this immediately. Local women watch from the edges, with expressions carefully trained into blankness and failing. Men lower their eyes in public and gossip in private. Priests of the God of Israel stiffen at every imported custom, every foreign textile, every trace of another world entering the palace with royal blessing and excellent tailoring. Nothing about Jezebel blends in. She prays differently, dresses differently, speaks with the cadence of the coast, with words that carry salt and distance. She brings attendants who know palace manners the local staff find exhausting. She expects standards. She notices disorder. She does not treat roughness as charming national character. This goes over terribly. By midday, the queen walks through pillared halls into the main court where petitions are heard. Sunlight slants across the paving stones. Guards stand with spears upright. Petitioners wait in heat thick enough to chew. A woman with a thin child on her hip sways from exhaustion. A farmer clutches a grievance. Two brothers glare at each other over some inherited patch of dirt that has probably caused arguments for 3 generations and will continue until everyone involved dies mad. Power smells like dust and impatience. Ahab takes his place and the machinery starts. Officials murmur, cases are called, witnesses bow and sweat. A scribe scratches notes onto a writing surface while looking like his spine filed formal complaints at least an hour ago. The queen sits nearby and watches. People notice that too. She is not hidden, not silent behind a screen, not decorative in the background, smiling softly while men make decisions. Her gaze lands where it wants. She listens. She speaks to Ahab in low tones now and then, and each whisper sends a little ripple through the court, because everyone can see influence happening in real time, and nobody enjoys that. One old landowner mutters after backing away from the dais. He mutters just softly enough to survive, but not softly enough to go unheard. Foreign woman? Foreign gods? Foreign trouble? His mouth pinches like he has bitten a lemon, which would be more sympathetic if his own tunic did not smell like onions, sheep, and self-importance. Jezebel hears. Of course she hears. You do not grow up in courts without learning to catch the dangerous little words. Her face barely changes. That almost makes it worse. A full outburst can be managed. Cold attention from a queen is much more unsettling. It feels like being filed away for future use. Now the polite ceremony gives way to the part everyone feels and nobody names in public. Marriage at this level is less a partnership and more a room full of knives pretending to be furniture. Ahab wants a successful reign, border security, profitable trade, and peace at home. Jezebel wants honor for the house she came from, room for the gods she brought with her, and a position nobody can quietly shrink after the wedding feast leftovers are gone. Those wants do not sit together peacefully. At night, after the petitions and audiences and offerings, and endless parade of people wanting something, the royal chambers close. Lamps burn low against plaster walls painted warm in flickering light. Trays of food arrive mostly untouched. Bread, olives, stewed lentils, chunks of roasted meat gone cool around the edges, wine cut with water. The room smells of cedar chests, body heat, and conversation no servant is supposed to hear. But servants always hear. Ahab loosens his collar and complains about prophets. Not all prophets, just the inconvenient kind, the ones who appear smelling of dust, leather, and self-assurance to announce that the king has displeased God. They are spectacularly hard to entertain. You cannot flatter them, buy them, or seat them near better wine and expect improvement. They show up, say upsetting things, and leave everybody tense for hours. Jezebel listens with the stillness of someone gathering information. She comes from a world where gods are served with splendid ritual. Altars smoke beautifully. Priests function as part of the visible machinery of state. Religion has architecture, procession, costuming. If a deity is being honored, everyone can tell from at least 2 streets away. Israel is messier. One God, no image. Prophets wandering in from nowhere dressed like cave-adjacent laundry. and a national conscience that keeps erupting at politically inconvenient moments. From Jezebel's point of view, it must feel like marrying into a household where every cousin thinks he hears the voice of heaven, and none of them agree about seating arrangements. No wonder she finds this irritating. The first time she visits one of the local shrines, the discomfort is almost physical. The altar smoke stings your eyes. The priesthood is earnest, but not especially elegant. The crowd stares. Some bow because she is queen. Some do not quite bow enough because she is not their kind of queen. Everyone notices what she wears, what she touches, what she does not say. The silence around her crackles. Then she returns to the palace and starts making room. Not small room, not token room, real room. Space for the gods of her homeland. Space for Baal, stormlord of cloud and fertility. The kind of god coastal royalty does not keep hidden in a cupboard. Space for Asherah too, with her own symbols, her own sacred associations, her own attendants and rituals. If Samaria is going to host a Phoenician queen, Samaria is going to notice. Workmen arrive. Stone is hauled, timber measured, courtyards adjusted, storerooms emptied to hold imported vessels, incense, embroidered hangings, carved stands, polished basins, and all the beautiful, expensive ritual hardware that turns devotion into an event. Hammers ring in palace precincts. Dust coats the sandals of men who would rather not be seen assisting foreign worship but enjoy being paid. Money has a persuasive voice. Soon the palace smells different. Not just local sacrifice now, with its blood and ash and roasted flesh. There are heavier perfumes in the air, resin thick as syrup, sweet smoke drifting from censers, oil poured over carved surfaces, garlands wilting in the heat, rich scent layered over old scent until the place feels less like one kingdom and more like a theological traffic jam. People talk. People always talk, but now they do it with extra saliva. In kitchens, at wells, outside workshops, in market lanes buzzing with flies, the queen becomes a walking scandal before lunch. She brought her gods. She feeds foreign priests. She advises the king. She wears paint. She does not humble herself. She looks men in the face when they address her. She is exactly as bad as rumor hoped. By the time afternoon heat turns the city into a simmering grudge, her name has become a spice people add to every complaint. The market is where you feel it most. You push through stalls under patched awnings while sellers shout over one another and chickens attempt low-level sabotage beneath the tables. Dates sweat in baskets. Fish begin losing the war against the sun. Goats nose at piles of wilted greens. Leather workers sit in their own specialized cloud of horror while trying to pretend the smell is normal. Above all of it, palace business hangs like weather. A tax official passes, escorted and hated. A cart carrying cedar planks lumbers uphill toward royal grounds. Two women whisper near the grain cellar and glance toward the palace hill. A man spits into the dust and says the queen's name as if removing something bitter from his mouth. His friend nods solemnly, despite clearly enjoying the gossip far too much. By midday, you can feel the whole city stuffing its nerves into one woman's name and passing it around like a market rumor. Which is convenient, really. Far easier to point at the foreign queen with the painted eyes and imported religion than admit the kingdom was already unstable, ambitious, divided, and spiritually dramatic before she ever set foot on the hill. Still, she gives them material. Jezebel does not retreat into meekness. No chance. She hosts formal meals where Phoenician guests recline beside Israelite officials who would rather lick a wall than admit the food is excellent. She supports her own priests. She fills the palace with attendants loyal to her household. She speaks like someone who expects outcomes, and over time that expectation starts producing them. That is when resentment hardens. Ahab, meanwhile, drifts between fascination and discomfort. You can see it on him at banquets. He likes splendor. He likes strong wine, good furniture, and the prestige of international alliance. He likes being married to a woman who makes smaller men nervous just by entering the room. He does not like the consequences arriving attached. When local leaders complain, he shifts. When prophets thunder, he broods. When Jezebel presses for support, he yields, or half-yields, or stalls in that soft, indecisive royal way that manages to anger everybody equally. It is like watching a man try to sleep between two barking dogs and act surprised when rest proves elusive. No part of this household is restful. One evening, the king and queen dine in a high chamber open to the cooling air. Below, the city spreads in layers of roofline, lamplight, and drifting smoke. From this height, Samaria almost looks serene. Distance is flattering that way. It hides the drains, the flies, the alley stink, the muttering, the unpaid labor, and at least 3 active grudges per household. Up here, there are silver cups and glazed dishes. Music drifts from somewhere in the court below. A servant fans coals under a brazier where spiced meat warms gently. Another refills wine. A third stands so still he has become decorative furniture with anxiety. The queen wears earrings that move when she turns her head. The king tears bread and stares into the middle distance, like a man trying not to be scolded in multiple languages. They speak softly at first, about ships, tribute, grain, levies, borders, whether a certain official is loyal or merely useful, whether another is useful or merely loud. It is married conversation, royal edition, less how was your day, and more which district may revolt first. Then religion enters the room. Not dramatically. It just arrives and sits down, like an unwelcome relative nobody invited, but everybody expected. Jezebel wants royal support made visible, public, unambiguous, priests maintained, altars active. Her place in this kingdom recognized through the honoring of her gods. Ahab rubs his forehead. He knows the people, or thinks he does. He knows how quickly outrage ignites when faith and power get tangled, which in Israel is always. He knows there are men in rough cloaks already glaring at the horizon, just waiting for a chance to announce doom with unsettling enthusiasm. He also knows he married a king's daughter, not a decorative vase. The air between them grows tight. No shouting. Not yet. Something more exhausting. Careful words, repeated words, the same points circling again in fresh clothing. Ahab wants peace. Jezebel wants strength. Ahab wants balance. Jezebel hears weakness in the word and does not bother hiding it. Outside, a dog barks somewhere in the city below. Inside, the servant with the wine discovers a spiritual gift for becoming invisible. By the next morning, orders are moving. New provisions for the queen's household. More support for her priests. More accommodations. More visible royal favor. It is never one dramatic decree that changes the weather. More often, it is a chain of practical decisions made by tired people in expensive rooms while everyone else pays for the mood. The city notices immediately. Samaria is very alert to insult. It can smell one at a quarter mile, even through goat. Every public sign of Jezebel's influence lands like grit in the teeth. Every imported rite, every palace appointment, every whispered report that another local official now bows slightly lower to the queen than before, and still she moves through the palace as if she belongs there. That may be the most offensive thing of all. She does not perform apology. She does not shrink to soothe local nerves. She wears her rank openly, gives commands without flinching, and receives reports with the cool concentration of someone who has long understood that power unclaimed gets taken. You stand in a shaded corridor one afternoon while she passes. Attendants before her, attendants behind, sandals tapping stone, linen whispering. The scent of perfume reaches you a moment before she does, sharp and expensive, all resin and flowers and determination. Two officials flatten themselves aside with little bows and faces that say they plan to complain later over wine. Jezebel does not look at them. At the far end of the corridor, sunlight spills across a courtyard where altar smoke rises in blue threads. Priests move there in orderly rhythm, carrying bowls, wood, knives, fabrics. It is all very polished, very deliberate, very unlike the rougher religious habits many in Israel consider proper. To supporters, it must feel magnificent. To enemies, it feels like occupation with better tailoring. And this is only the beginning. Because once a queen starts building, feeding, appointing and honoring, she also starts threatening. Not always by direct action. Sometimes just by existing in public, effectively with resources. An established order can tolerate a foreign bride in theory. A foreign bride who becomes a center of gravity is another matter. So the whispers sharpen. In the palace kitchens, over onions and steaming pots, servants trade stories while scraping burnt bits from yesterday's pans. They say the queen keeps strange hours. They say she knows spells from the coast. They say she can look through a man and find whatever sin he hoped was private. They say her gods demand too much. They say her table never lacks meat. They say the king listens too closely when she speaks. They say many things. Most of them come from people who know almost nothing and would perish without gossip. But rumors are the easiest crop to grow in hot weather. No ploughing required. Just fear, envy, and enough idle mouths to spread seed. By evening, the city hums with it. You climb the palace stairs at dusk and look back across Samaria. Smoke lifts from cook fires. Families gather in cramped rooms. Bread bakes on hot surfaces. Children squabble. Men come home smelling of labor, road dust, and old temper. Women pour water, cut herbs, sort grain, hush infants, and hear the latest tale about the queen from somebody who swears his cousin serves near the royal court and saw everything. Below, resentment goes to bed and wakes up stronger. Above, the palace glows. Lamps burn behind carved screens. Banquet rooms pulse with light and voices. Bronze flashes. Ivory catches flamelight in pale gleams. Musicians tune strings. Courtiers arrange themselves into clusters of ambition. Somewhere, a steward is having the worst evening of his life because some shipment has not arrived, and rich people hate being told no. Jezebel enters that lit world as if born for it, which she was. That matters. She did not claw her way up from obscurity. She was raised among docks crowded with cedar and silver, among merchant princes, shrine smoke, and diplomatic calculation. She knows what a court is for. She knows that banquets are theatres, gifts are messages, and every seat assignment has teeth. Samaria, for all its polish, is still learning, so she becomes impossible to ignore, too foreign for comfort, too competent to dismiss, too visible to erase. Men who would have preferred a quiet wife discover they have acquired a queen. Priests who expected royal religion to stay neatly local discover that marriage can bring gods in the baggage train. A king who wanted alliance and splendor discovers that power has a smell, and once it fills the house, it clings to everything. Even the marriage bed is not free of it. No room is, not in a palace, not in a kingdom balancing on trade, weather, military threat, prophetic outrage, and wounded national pride. You lie down on fine cushions under rich coverings, while somewhere beyond the walls a watchman calls the hour. A donkey complains to the moon, and the city's drains continue doing whatever pathetic work they can. The night air slips through carved openings. It smells of ash, refuse, cooling stone, trampled rushes, and lingering incense from altars below. A strange mix, like trying to cover a stable with imported perfume, which, in a way, is the whole kingdom now. Wealth and rot, devotion and theatre, linen and dust, desire and grievance sharing one mattress and pretending this can last. Jezebel lies awake in the dark beside a king whose kingdom does not love her. That may not trouble her at first. Queens are not hired for popularity. But kingdoms have a way of turning dislike into memory, and memory into a weapon with a very long handle. For now, though, she is newly arrived, newly enthroned, newly hated. Below the palace, market dogs nose through refuse. Watchfires burn low. Somewhere in the city, somebody spits after saying her name. Somewhere else, somebody says it with admiration. In one house, she is a scandal. In another, she is a marvel. In the palace, she is already changing the temperature of every room she enters. Morning will make it worse, because the city has now seen her. The court has felt her weight. The priests have smelled the foreign incense. The king has made his first accommodations. And once a queen begins settling into a throne, the throne starts settling around her, shaping itself to her habits, her hunger, her gods, her allies, her enemies. Samaria is learning her, slowly, uneasily, with clenched teeth. And she is learning Samaria too. Its brittle pride, its holy temper, its rough prophets, its suspicious courtiers, its king with his soft hands and conflicted spine, its people who can endure taxes, war, drought, and bad bread, but who absolutely refuse to endure being told a foreign woman belongs over them. That insult is going to ripen in the heat, and when it does, it will not stay in whispers or side glances or muttered curses in the market. It will climb the palace steps. The smell changes before you reach the palace gardens. Out in the streets, Samaria is all dust, donkey breath, frying oil, and humanity packed too close together. But here the air shifts. Wet soil, crushed herbs, fig leaves warming under the sun, irrigation channels whispering through stone, a private green world carved out of a city that still smells at heart like hot animals and unpaid labor. And just beyond the wall sits a vineyard so tidy it almost offends you. Rows of vines stretch in careful order, leaves bright and healthy, grapes swelling under the heat. Naboth's plot lies close to the palace, close enough that a king can look at it and develop the sort of desire usually reserved for crowns, border cities, and other men's wives. It is not a vast estate. That is part of the irritation. It is simply there, useful, inconveniently owned by someone else. Ahab wants it, not because he is starving, not because the kingdom will collapse without it. He wants a vegetable garden there, which is somehow the pettiest detail in the whole miserable business. A king with storehouses, armies, servants, tribute, and probably several places to sit dramatically while looking troubled, has fixed his heart on one patch of dirt for cucumbers. You can almost hear the conversation before it happens. Ahab goes out to Naboth with that soft royal tone people use when they are pretending this is a fair negotiation. He offers money, better land, a trade. He speaks as if they are two neighbors discussing fence repairs and not one king and one man whose life can become very difficult very quickly. Naboth does not bend. He stands there in his own dirt under his own vines and says no. Not rude, not theatrical, just no. This land came from his fathers. It belongs to his family line. You can keep your silver. You can keep your improved offer. You can keep your royal feelings too, while you're at it. It is the kind of answer that sounds noble right up until you imagine saying it to a king's face. Ahab returns to the palace in a full-grown sulk. He lies down on his bed, turns his face to the wall, and refuses to eat, which is the ancient Near Eastern version of dramatically posting, fine, and hoping everyone asks what's wrong. Somewhere in the palace, servants pause with trays in their hands, trying to decide whether this is a hunger strike, a mood, or both. The king, defender of Israel, terror of enemies, steward of armies, is pouting because a man would not hand over his vineyard. Then the whole miserable business turns from sulking to action. Jezebel walks in and finds her husband flopped on the bed like a damp cloak. He is gloomy. He is offended. He is somehow making his disappointment everybody else's problem, which in a palace is less a personality flaw than an atmospheric condition. You feel it in the corridors. The servants feel it. The cooks feel it. Even the flies probably feel it and think, wow, this man is exhausting. She asks what happened. He tells her about Naboth, about the refusal, about the unacceptable existence of boundaries. You can almost see her face settle. Not shocked, not sympathetic in the way he probably hoped. More like someone discovering that the mighty king of Israel has been emotionally defeated by a vineyard owner with family values. She does not coddle him. Her response lands with the cool force of a knife set neatly on a table. Do you govern Israel or not? In other words, are you a king or are you a decorative cushion wearing a crown? Eat your food. Sit up. I'll handle it. And that is the moment the room gets colder. Because now appetite joins administration. Desire puts on official robes. What Ahab wanted lazily, Jezebel moves to obtain efficiently. You can feel the machinery creak awake. Messengers, seals, letters, elders. The whole miserable apparatus of respectable evil where nobody technically screams and everyone keeps their hands very clean, right until someone dies. She writes in Ahab's name. The letters go out under the royal seal, that little stamp of authority that can make ordinary men do extraordinary filth while telling themselves they are merely following proper procedure. The instructions are simple and monstrous. Proclaim a fast. Seat Naboth in a place of honor. Find 2 scoundrels to accuse him publicly of cursing God and the king. Then drag him out and stone him. It is legal theater. That is what makes it so foul. They are not hiring a thug in an alley. They are staging a civic event. Public piety out front, murder backstage. A fast to make it seem holy. Witnesses to make it seem proper. Communal outrage to make it seem necessary. It is the ancient version of laundering blood through paperwork. You can picture the elders receiving the letters. Their fingers break the seal. Their eyes move over the lines. Maybe one of them swallows hard. Maybe another looks out the doorway toward the square where children run barefoot and somebody is selling onions and life still has the nerve to appear normal. They know what this means. Everybody knows. But the king's seal sits there on the page like a snake coiled in wax. So the town prepares. Naboth is summoned. A fast is proclaimed. People gather in solemn clothes, faces arranged into public seriousness. Dust lifts from sandals. Sun presses down. Somebody coughs. Somebody squints. The whole thing has the stale, horrible energy of a sham proceeding. Everyone understands, but nobody interrupts. They seat Naboth prominently. That detail is almost worse. They honor him before they destroy him. They put him where all can see, like a guest at his own execution banquet. Maybe he feels the attention and does not understand. Maybe he starts to understand too late, when the two worthless men step forward with their accusation already polished and ready. The charge comes sharp and ugly. Blasphemy, treason. He cursed God and the king. It is exactly the sort of claim that leaves almost no room to breathe once it has entered the air. People gasp because they are supposed to gasp. Heads turn. The elders do what they were told. The crowd shifts from gathered to dangerous in about 3 heartbeats. Then they take him outside the city. You go with them because there is nowhere else for the story to go now. Past the walls, past the places where decent life pretends to happen. The ground out there is rough. Stones lie everywhere because of course they do. In these stories there are always enough stones. Human cruelty never lacks for materials. And then it is done. Not elegantly, not quickly enough. There is shouting, impact, breath knocked from lungs, the thud of bodies stumbling, the awful chaotic rhythm of communal murder. Dust kicks up, men strain and sweat. Somebody's sandal slips, somebody picks up another stone. It is ugly in the practical, workmanlike way violence often is, with no music and no dignity and too much grunting. When it ends, Naboth's vineyard is available. That sentence should make you ill. A man is dead, and his inheritance becomes real estate inventory. Somewhere a messenger returns to the palace with the news. Naboth is gone. The matter is settled. The field has changed owners through a procedure so proper it could make you spit. Ahab gets up. His appetite returns. Remarkable recovery. The man who could not eat because he was too upset can certainly walk out to claim the newly vacated land. You follow him down the path toward the vineyard, and the place looks exactly as it did before. Vines, soil, sunlight, leaves moving in a little breeze. That is one of the insults of murder. The world keeps looking normal, but someone is already there. Elijah appears like a storm in human form. No polished court manner, no perfume trying to hide the sweat, no diplomatic softness, just rough prophet energy walking straight into royal satisfaction and ruining the afternoon. You can almost hear the brakes screech in Ahab's soul. The king sees him and knows immediately this is not a social call. Elijah's presence has that effect. He arrives carrying desert dust, divine fury, and the kind of eye contact that makes powerful men feel suddenly overexposed. Ahab spits out the obvious question. Have you found me, my enemy? Yes. Very much. Yes. The prophet's words fall hard. You sold yourself to do what was evil. You murdered and took possession. In the place where dogs licked Naboth's blood, dogs will lick yours. As for Jezebel, dogs will devour her by the wall of Jezreel. It is not subtle. Prophets are not known for their gift baskets. You stand there in the heat while the curse settles. No one speaks. Somewhere a fly lands and is brushed away. The vines rustle. The king, who came to inspect his nice new property, now has death pronounced over his house with agricultural calm all around him. It is an appalling mismatch, grapes swelling on the vine, judgment hanging in the air. Biblical life loves that kind of tonal whiplash. Ahab tears his clothes. For once, the performance seems to crack into something like genuine fear. He puts on sackcloth, fasts, goes about subdued. You have seen royal moods already, but this one lands differently. Not petulance, dread, the kind that sits in the stomach and ruins food. Even so, the blood is not undone. Naboth does not get up. The vineyard does not return itself. Life lurches on. That is always the maddening part. Court business continues. Meals are served. Orders are issued. Sandals wear out. Babies cry. Grain is measured. And over all of it hangs this sentence that has not yet come due. Dogs, blood, Jezreel. You can feel everybody trying not to look directly at the future. Years pass. The smell has not improved. The kingdom stumbles through war and politics and the usual royal disasters. Ahab goes to battle and does not return whole. The curse begins eating through the house exactly as promised, because these stories do not hand out threats for decoration. Blood spills. Dynasties wobble. Men who thought power was a permanent mattress discover it is more like standing on a cracked roof tile. And Jezebel remains. You watch her survive the first shocks. The Queen Mother now, older, harder, still carrying herself like someone who has spent years refusing to become small for anybody's comfort. Around her, the house decays. Sons sit on unstable thrones. Rivals gather. Soldiers mutter. The corridors fill with that sour, metallic smell of panic under perfume. Then Jehu rises. Not politely, not through committee. He comes like a coup with horse sweat on it. Furious driving. Dust clouds. Messenger after messenger sent out and swallowed up. The kind of military momentum that makes watchmen on city towers narrow their eyes and say, with ancient understatement, that man drives like a lunatic. You hear of him before you see him. Hooves hammering hard over the road, wheels rattling, leather creaking, men armed and moving with purpose, not parade purpose, not ceremonial purpose. The ugly, practical purpose of regime change, where everybody suddenly remembers they have always disliked the current administration and absolutely never supported its excesses? No, sir. Joram goes out to meet him. So does Ahaziah. Kings still think conversation might be possible right up until the arrow arrives. They ride out into Naboth's field because apparently history enjoys dramatic location callbacks. The cursed ground is there, waiting, still dirt, still ordinary, still somehow selected as the place where accounts are settled. Jehu answers peace with violence. An arrow flies. Joram folds in on himself and dies in his chariot. His body is thrown onto the very land stolen from Naboth, which is the kind of justice that lands with a dreadful thud. No speech can improve on that image. The field receives another body from the same diseased house. Then Jehu drives to Jezreel. By now, the city knows something is wrong. News runs faster than dignity. Servants whisper. Guards glance at one another. Somewhere in the palace, a cup is set down too hard and cracks. Somewhere else, somebody starts deciding which side they were always on. And Jezebel hears he is coming. This is one of those moments that has survived because it is so startlingly human. She does not throw herself on the floor. She does not flee in a panic. She does not wrap herself in rags and beg. Instead, she paints her eyes, arranges her hair, and looks out of the window. The moment hangs there for a beat. The room smells of oils, old wood, linen, and the faint, dusty sweetness of cosmetics ground fine in little containers. A servant's hands may be trembling. Jezebel's are not. Dark kohl lines the eyes. Hair is set in order. Jewelry catches the light. Outside, the city is tightening like a drumhead. Inside, she prepares her face as if civilization itself must be maintained for 5 more minutes. Standing there in the room, it feels less mysterious than the gossip later makes it sound. Dignity is often the last weapon left. When the gates are failing and your enemies are at the door and your dynasty is coming apart like cheap stitching, there is still posture. There is still presentation. There is still the refusal to meet death looking undone. It is not vanity in the shallow sense. It is theatre, defiance, rank, habit, self-command. It is saying, if I am to be seen, I will be seen as queen. So she goes to the window. Below, Jehu enters the city in all the warm fragrance of horses, leather, iron, and men who have been riding too hard for too long. It is not a pleasant smell. War rarely is. Sweat has dried and freshened again. Dust cakes the hems of garments. Harness straps groan. Somebody's horse has clearly relieved itself nearby because battle glory and manure are lifelong companions. Jezebel looks down. From above, she still has the height. It matters. Palaces understand verticality very well. The one below is vulnerable to what descends from above. Words, stones, orders, contempt. Her voice cuts through the air, and she greets him with a bitter little dagger of a question. Had peace come for Zimri, murderer of his master? In other words, enjoy your coup, darling. We have seen this genre before. It is a good line. Probably not comforting to hear from your enemy at the top of a wall, but undeniably good. Even now she is naming him, framing him, refusing to let him stride in as pure deliverer. She throws history at him like crockery. You are not a savior. You are another man who killed his way upward. Jehu does not bother trading many words. He looks up and calls out, asking who is on his side. It is the practical question of every coup. Not philosophy, not legitimacy. Who exactly is ready to survive this day by helping me? A few eunuchs appear at the window beside her. Their faces must have been something to behold. Pale, tight, measuring the distance between loyalty and self-preservation. And then it happens with brutal speed. "Throw her down," he says. That sentence crosses the space between rider and window and turns the room inside out. Hands move. Jezebel is seized. Maybe there is a gasp, maybe a struggle, maybe just the horrifying swiftness of servants changing allegiance in real time. One moment she is framed in the window, painted and upright. The next she is falling. The impact is ghastly. Blood spatters the wall. Some strikes the horses, some spatters Jehu himself. The body hits the ground with all the elegance knocked clean out of it. So much for royal posture, so much for the cosmetics. Stone and gravity are extremely rude about status, and somehow the story gets worse. Jehu goes inside and eats. Of course he does. Ancient coups have the emotional tone of a man checking off errands before lunch. He sits down to food while the queen's body lies in the courtyard. Meat, bread, wine. The room probably still hums with the aftershock. Servants moving carefully, nobody quite sure where to look. But the new strongman is hungry, and regime change apparently works up an appetite. Then, after eating and drinking, he remembers basic burial decorum. "Go see to that cursed woman," he says, "and bury her, for she is a king's daughter." Even here the line bites. Cursed woman, yes, but still royal, still somebody's daughter from a house of kings. There is a scrap of acknowledgement in it, though a very unpleasantly phrased one. Servants go out to gather what remains. Then comes the part that makes the courtyard feel unfit for human beings. Dogs have been at the body. They find skull, feet, and the palms of her hands. That is all. The rest is gone into the teeth and stomachs of street scavengers, those shameless biblical cleanup crews always lurking at the edge of disaster. You can smell the courtyard. Blood, dust, dog, hot stone, that rank animal smell of things torn open under the sun. Servants trying not to gag. Someone covering his mouth with his sleeve. Somebody else staring at the wall because looking down feels impossible. So this is what became of painted eyes and arranged hair and Phoenician grandeur. The report comes back to Jehu. There is hardly anything left to bury, and with that, the old sentence spoken in Naboth's vineyard lands in full. By the wall of Jezreel, dogs devour Jezebel. It has happened. The woman who entered Israel with polish and foreign gods and expensive fabrics and dangerous confidence now cannot even be neatly placed in a tomb. No marker large enough. No body whole enough. Just fragments. That detail matters because burial in that world is not some decorative extra. It is memory with architecture. It is family honor in stone. It is being gathered to your own. To lose that, to be left uncontained, scattered, half-eaten, almost unnameable in physical form, is horror piled on judgment. And yet, even there, she refuses to disappear. Because look at what has happened. The body is wrecked. The dynasty is breaking. The dogs have done their foul work. But her name only grows. It detaches from flesh and turns into something portable, repeatable, usable. Jezebel becomes a warning, an insult, a type. Once that happens, death cannot tidy her away. Still, in this moment, you are standing in the courtyard and none of that future language exists yet. There is only shock. The painted queen has become remains. The wall is stained. The horses snort and stamp. Flies gather with disgusting efficiency because flies treat catastrophe as catering. Above, the window gapes open. It is now just a rectangle in the wall, empty and dark, but your eyes keep going back to it. You can almost see her there again, head high, eyes darkened, hair arranged, looking down at the man who came for her. It is one of those images too sharp to shake, not because she wins. She very much does not. But because she meets the end standing in the frame of her own ruin, still refusing to look ordinary. That is part of why people remembered her, not merely because she was cruel. There are plenty of cruel rulers and their spouses littering these histories like cracked pots in a ditch. Not merely because Naboth died. Human greed is tragically common. She endured in memory because everything around her had spectacle. Palace walls, forged letters, false witnesses, prophets storming vineyards, blood on chariot wheels, painted eyes at a window, dogs in the courtyard. It is horror staged with royal props, and royal props make excellent memory. You can still trace the whole sequence in your body. First, the vineyard air, green and watered and offensively peaceful. Then, the stale misery of Ahab's sulk. Then the scratch of pen over letters carrying death under a king's seal. Then dust outside the city and stones hitting flesh. Then Elijah arriving to ruin a stolen afternoon. Then years of dread maturing like bad wine. Then Jehu on the road, driving as if moderation were for weaker men. Then the room upstairs, the little cosmetic containers, the comb, the servant fastening what can still be fastened, the old queen choosing presentation over panic. It is almost unbearably intimate, that pause before disaster, because everyone knows what comes next, and she knows it too. Yet the hand remains steady enough to line an eye. There is something ghastly and magnificent in that. Not good, not innocent, not admirable in some clean, simple way, but magnificent in the old dangerous sense. Like a fire large enough to terrify you while still being impossible not to watch. A life spent inside power tends to end theatrically. Nobody in that palace gets a gentle fade out with a nice blanket and soft music. They get blood on the wall. Outside the palace, ordinary people go on doing ordinary things. That may be the strangest part. Somewhere a woman needs dough. Somewhere a child cries because his brother took the better fig. Somewhere a man curses at a stubborn donkey with language the scribes would absolutely not preserve. Life keeps producing its tiny inconveniences while dynasties implode nearby. Human beings are very good at continuing under collapsing ceilings. But everyone will hear about this. By evening, the city is one long nerve of rumor. Servants carry news to cousins. Guards mutter details at doorways. Market sellers improve the story with every retelling. By the time it travels 3 streets away, the blood is brighter, the speech longer, the horses fiercer, the dogs larger, and Jezebel somehow even more painted. People love adding garnish to catastrophe. Her enemies savor it. You can hear the relish in certain voices. The foreign queen, the idle woman, the troublemaker, the one who fed prophets of Baal, threatened Elijah, manipulated kings, arranged deaths, painted her face like she thought she could outstare judgment. For those who hated her, this ending feels satisfyingly brutal, a cautionary tale with teeth. But standing close to it, satisfaction is not the whole atmosphere. There is terror too. Because if queens can be thrown from windows, what exactly is secure? If royal seals can kill a vineyard owner, and prophets can curse dynasties, and generals can arrive in a whirlwind of horses to replace one regime with another by supper, then everyone is living on shakier ground than they prefer to admit. The palace is not safety. It is merely danger with better upholstery. And the upholstery probably smells weird. Ivory inlays, heavy textiles, cedar chests, perfumes soaked into wood over years, smoke caught in curtains, old oil, metal polish, human fear. Palace air is never clean. It just has more expensive attempts at disguise. By the final hours of a collapsing dynasty, all of that luxury starts smelling like a room where fruit has gone rotten under a pile of embroidered cloth. So you leave the courtyard and carry the image with you. The vineyard, the accusation, the stones, the prophet, the road, the window, the fall. Each scene sticks like burrs in fabric. Ahab wanting what he cannot simply have. Jezebel solving the problem in the most poisonous way available. Naboth losing everything because the powerful were annoyed. Elijah stepping into stolen property with a curse like thunder. Then years later, the queen at the window, turning cosmetics into armor for a battle she cannot win. That is how a person becomes more than a person. You can feel the hardening already, even inside the first generations who speak her name afterward. She stops being only a woman in a palace and becomes a category in people's mouths. Dangerous wife, foreign corruption, predatory glamour, female power with blood under the fingernails. It is a lot to hang on one human body, especially one now reduced to bone fragments and a ruined courtyard. But history loves a woman it can blame with style. And Jezebel had style. That, frankly, did not help her case. She came polished into a kingdom that preferred its threats less scented and more familiar. She did cruel things in royal language, which made them glitter in a particularly offensive way. She kept surviving long enough to become emblematic. And when the end came, she had the audacity to meet it dressed. People do not forget that. They do not forget Naboth either, though in a different register. He remains there in his vineyard, the ordinary man whose refusal cost him his life and exposed the rot in the palace. You almost want to stand in that field again, just to get away from the wolves and horses and dogs. The vines at least are honest. They take what sun and water give them. They do not write letters, but the story will not let you stay among the grapes. Too much has happened. The blood has spread from field to city, from property dispute to dynastic collapse. One greedy desire tugged a thread, and now the whole royal garment has split at the seams. It lies in a heap smelling of dust, blood, horse, and old perfume. And somewhere above that courtyard, the window still opens onto the road. Quieter now. No queen in it. No taunt floating down. Just stone, heat, and memory clinging to the place like smoke in woven cloth. The wall remains. The city remains. The vines still grow where they can. Generals die, kings die, queens die. But some scenes cling harder than others. This one clung, because it had everything people remember. Appetite, injustice, theatrical wickedness, prophetic fury, aristocratic nerve. A gruesome ending no child should hear, and no adult quite forgets. The kind of story told in lowered voices first, then louder, then for generations, until the woman at the window becomes more legend than flesh. And the name endures, long after the painted face, the royal seal, and the blood on the wall are gone. And just when you think desire has done enough damage, someone starts asking very gentle questions. The smell changes first. You leave behind royal rooms and blood in the dust, and now the air turns thick and agricultural. Warm reeds, crushed grapes, sweat that has had all day to think about itself. You are in the valley of Sorek, where the hills fold down into border country, and everybody watches everybody else with the kind of smile that means absolutely nothing good. This is not deep inland safety. This is edge-of-the-map living. Philistines over there, Israelites over here, raiding parties, trade routes, vineyards, gossip, and men with knives pretending they are just very passionate farmers. The roads are hard-packed dirt by noon, ankle-grabbing mud after rain, and permanently decorated with donkey pellets, grape skins, and that one puddle no sane person steps in twice. The valley itself is beautiful in a way that feels rude. Vines crawl over terraces. Fig trees cast pockets of shade. Bees drift lazily through the heat, like they have no idea human beings are out here making terrible decisions. In the distance, hills go hazy under the afternoon sun. Up close, there are flies on your face and burrs in your sandals, and the constant sense that somebody nearby is about to ruin their life for reasons that will sound romantic at the time. And then there is Samson. You hear him before you really see him, because men like this arrive with noise attached, a laugh too loud, footsteps too heavy, the kind of body that makes door frames nervous. He moves through life like a cart with one broken wheel, unstoppable, alarming, and never fully under control. Somewhere behind the stories about him trail dead lions, broken gates, riddles gone wrong, and a number of extremely regrettable social interactions. He is not subtle. Subtlety and Samson have never shared a room. He is a man built for headlines, not caution. The sort of person who treats consequences like a rumor spread by cowards. Put him in a village, and within 6 hours something will be on fire. Someone will be offended, and a local official will be rubbing his temples like he just inherited the world's most muscular toddler. And now he is in Sorek. Of course he is. You can almost feel the valley brace itself. Somewhere a woman spots him coming and decides to mind her own business with astonishing intensity. Somewhere a Philistine lord hears the name and develops a facial twitch. Somewhere a potter pauses with clay on his hands and thinks, not him again. But Samson naturally has spotted Delilah. Her house sits where houses in dangerous places often sit, close enough to traffic for visitors, private enough for whispers. Mud brick walls, woven roof matting, a doorway shaded with hanging cloth that lifts and falls in the breeze. Inside, the room is cool in the morning and unbearable by late afternoon, with low tables, baskets against the wall, jars of oil, folded cloth, and a sleeping area at the back where woven bedding waits in a neat stack, like it has no idea it is about to become famous for all the worst reasons. This is where the trouble lives. Delilah is not introduced with thunder. No one shouts her name from a rooftop. She is just there, in the middle of this sticky borderland heat, with eyes that miss very little and a voice that knows how to lower itself into the softest possible register. You look at her and immediately understand that she is dangerous, in the way a calm person in a loud room is dangerous. She does not need to perform. Other people do enough of that around her, and Samson does. He comes to her like disaster wearing cologne. Maybe not actual cologne, because mostly he smells like sun, leather, road dust, and male confidence that really should have been supervised. But in his own mind, he is irresistible. He arrives grinning, shoulders broad, hair hanging in thick ropes down his back, probably with fresh dirt on his feet and some half-finished boast in his mouth. Delilah lets him in. You can feel the whole valley lean closer. In houses like this, everything is heard through something. Through thin walls, through courtyards, through a servant passing too slowly with a water jar. Through neighbors who are not listening in the same way cats are not staring at your food. Privacy is a myth. Secrets are expensive. The sound of a man like Samson visiting one woman again and again spreads faster than spilled oil. Soon enough, the Philistine rulers come calling. Not publicly, not with drums. This is quieter than that. Sandals on packed earth, men entering by side lanes, good linen, hard faces, the smell of expensive oil trying and failing to cover steel and anxiety. They speak to Delilah in the practical tone men use when they are deeply frightened but would rather die than admit it. Find out where his great strength comes from. Not in some grand, mystical way. Not by standing under the moon and composing poetry about his soul. No, they want specifics. What binds him? What weakens him? What will finally make this walking landslide sit down? They are offering silver for information, and not a little. Enough metal to make a floor sag. Enough to change a household. Enough to make every hidden corner of a room suddenly look useful. You can picture it. Coils of silver, heavy pieces stacked in cloth bundles, tucked under bedding, buried beneath grain, hidden in jars, wrapped in old rags. Money with weight. Money that clinks. Money that makes a person lie awake at night, hearing not wind at the door, but possibility. Delilah hears the offer. She does not gasp theatrically or clutch at her chest, like this is all simply too shocking. She listens. Maybe she folds her hands. Maybe she glances once toward the doorway where evening light cuts across the floor. Maybe she thinks of Samson laughing. Maybe she thinks of what it means to live in a valley where men like him explode through people's lives and leave other people to sweep up the pottery. Then she says, yes. The household shifts after that. Not outwardly, not at first. The lamp still needs trimming. Bread still needs baking. Water still has to be carried in from the well, sloshing against the clay jar and darkening the front of your tunic. Dust still blows under the door. The room still smells of woven mats, warm oil, stale wine, and human bodies living too close together. But now, there is silver in the walls of the story, hidden listeners in the air. Every soft word has hooks in it, and Samson, glorious fool that he is, keeps coming back. He sits at the low table, tearing bread with those hands that have done impossible things. Crumbs gather in his beard. He drinks. He sprawls. He laughs. He looks like a man completely at home in a place where he should be at least a little nervous. You watch him lean back against a cushion, bare feet dusty, hair heavy over his shoulders, and the only thought in your head is, "Sir, your survival instincts are decorative." Delilah begins gently. That is the absurd part. Not with accusation. Not with some obviously suspicious interrogation, torch-lit by dramatic music. She asks the way someone might ask where you bought a nice bowl, softly, almost idly. "Tell me," she says, "what makes you so strong? How could someone tie you up? How could you be subdued? It is such a normal way to ruin a life." Samson should sit bolt upright. He should hear every alarm bell ever invented. He should excuse himself immediately and go sleep literally anywhere else. Maybe in a cave, maybe up a tree, maybe inside a large clay jar if necessary. Instead, he treats it like flirtation, a game, a little teasing exchange. Because apparently, if you are strong enough to tear things apart, you assume consequence itself can be arm wrestled. So, he lies. "Fresh bowstrings," he says. "Not dried ones. New ones. Tie me up with those and I'll be weak like any other man." You can almost see him smirk after saying it, pleased with himself. He thinks this is charming. He thinks they are having fun. He is one missed omen away from juggling snakes at a dinner party. The bowstrings are found. Maybe brought in rolled up and smelling faintly of animal sinew and tannin. Tough, pale, slightly slick to the touch. Delilah waits until he is relaxed, warm from food and wine, maybe sprawled half asleep in that close indoor heat where flies buzz lazily and afternoon presses on your eyelids. Then she binds him. And men are waiting. Of course they are, hidden nearby. Behind a partition in the next room, outside the door, muscles tense, trying not to breathe too loudly. Imagine being those men. Imagine crouching in somebody else's house, knees aching, sweat crawling down your back, listening to Samson snore and wondering whether this is your career now. You have a sword, probably. You also have terror, equal quantities. Delilah gives the signal. "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." It is the ancient version of a surprise audit, except with more homicide. Samson wakes, snaps the cords like threads catching fire, and the whole little ambush collapses into instant humiliation. Men scramble. The room erupts. There is cursing, probably furniture distress, definitely a lot of very rapid rethinking. Somewhere, a hidden warrior realizes he has made several poor life choices and would now like to be spiritually elsewhere. And still, he stays. This is what makes the whole thing feel like a terrible romance and a workplace safety violation at once. The obvious move, after one attempted capture in your lover's house, would be to leave and never return. A child would know this. A goat would know this. A man with Samson's history should absolutely know this. But no, he remains in the orbit of Delilah, as if near death is just another spice in the stew. She tries again. This time she is offended, or pretends to be. "You have mocked me," she says. "You told me lies." The hurt in her voice is almost enough to distract from the fact that she literally just attempted to have him delivered like a package to armed enemies. Bold, honestly, deeply committed to the bit. Samson lies again. "New ropes," he says, "never used. Bind me with those and I'll be weak." Maybe he thinks this is still under control. Maybe he enjoys being wanted, even murderously wanted. Maybe his judgment has packed a bag and moved to another valley entirely. Whatever the case, Delilah gets the ropes. You can hear them drag across the floor. Coarse fibers, thick, dusty, rough enough to scratch skin. The kind of rope that leaves little marks and smells of hemp, storage, and old labor. Again, he ends up sleeping or pretending to sleep. Again, she wraps him. Again, the hidden men gather themselves like nervous stagehands waiting for a cue. Again, she cries out that the Philistines are upon him. Again, the ropes mean nothing. They part in his hands. The trap fails. The hidden men experience fresh disgrace. The room probably looks a mess by now. Cushions kicked aside. Rope ends on the floor. Somebody's water cup overturned. A household steadily becoming less of a home and more of a slapstick assassination venue. Any sensible person would stop here, not these two. By now the air in the room must feel strange even when no one is speaking. Charged, sticky, ridiculous. Delilah keeps smiling with effort. Samson keeps staying with a woman who has launched multiple capture attempts between meals. They are play-acting romance in a room that smells like lamp smoke, dust, and treason. You almost want to knock on the wall and say, "Excuse me, are either of you hearing yourselves?" Delilah presses him again. "You have made a fool of me," she says. There is probably a hand on his arm, a look held a little too long, softness weaponized so neatly it barely seems fair. And because Samson is Samson, he decides one more lie will surely improve this thriving situation. "Weave my hair into the loom," he says. His hair matters. You feel that at once, even before the final reveal. It is always there, heavy and thick, a visible part of whatever mystery hangs around him. 7 locks, braided or twisted, not neat in the polished courtly sense, but substantial. Hair with presence. Hair that says, this man has never met moderation and does not intend to begin now. So Delilah works with what he gives her. A loom stands in the house or near it, because cloth does not produce itself, and nobody in this world gets to avoid tedious fabric labor. The thing is wooden, upright, or horizontal depending on the setup, with warp threads stretched tight and tools hanging nearby. It smells faintly of wool grease, dust, and old hands. Delilah takes his hair and weaves it in, pinning or fastening it, so he is literally attached to the household equipment, like some enormous decorative problem. Once again, the cry goes out. Once again, the Philistines are upon you. And once again, Samson tears free, loom and all, reducing yet another plan to splinters and public embarrassment. Imagine the scene. Hair yanked loose, pegs rattling, threads snapping, a loom component skidding across the floor like a very confused piece of furniture. Somewhere in the next room, armed men are thinking perhaps this assignment is cursed. By now, even the flies seem judgmental. Delilah changes tactics. No more easy indignation. No more quick pouting. Now she leans in where people are weakest, the slow grind, The repeated question, the daily press, the wearing down. Anyone can survive one dramatic confrontation. It is the constant drip that gets you. The same voice, the same complaint. Morning and evening. During bread. During wine. While sandals are being unlaced. While the lamp is being lowered. While a man is trying to enjoy the one edible fig in a basket full of disappointment. "How can you say you love me?" she asks, "when your heart is not with me?" That lands differently. Not because she has earned trust. Absolutely not. But because affection makes people stupid in familiar, humiliating ways. Suddenly, this is not a game about ropes and surprise enemies. Now it is about intimacy, about what is held back, about why the door never fully opens. The most dangerous questions are often asked in the gentlest voice while your guard is off and your dinner is getting cold. She presses him day after day. You feel the fatigue of it. The house grows hotter. The afternoons drag. Sweat gathers under your clothes and dust clings to your ankles. Samson sits under all that pressure with his patience rubbed thin as cheap cloth. Delilah keeps at him. The room itself seems to join her, low roof trapping the heat, lamp smoke lingering, bedding smelling faintly of old wool and bodies. There is nowhere for thought to air out. At some point, he breaks. Not in battle, not under an army, not in some heroic last stand with shields crashing and trumpets blaring. No, he gives way in a domestic interior because a woman on a cushion would not stop asking. It is almost offensively ordinary. This legendary strongman, this human battering ram, worn down by relationship fatigue in a stuffy room. Ancient history contains many glories. It also contains this. He tells her, "No razor has come upon my head. He has been set apart from birth. If his head is shaved, his strength will leave him. He will become weak like any other man." There it is at last, the real answer, spoken into warm household air that has already swallowed too many lies. You can almost hear the room go still. Delilah knows immediately this time is different. Maybe it is his face, maybe the tone, maybe some instinct sharpened by weeks of deception. She does not waste the moment. Word goes out quickly and quietly. The rulers return with silver in their hands. Not promised now, present, tangible, heavy enough to feel through cloth. The house prepares itself. This is the night. Maybe the lamp is trimmed lower. Maybe the servants are dismissed or ordered elsewhere. Maybe the silver sits wrapped in a corner, mute and dense as fate. Outside, the valley of Sorek settles into evening noises. Insects in the brush, distant voices, a dog barking once and then regretting it, wind moving through vines. Inside, everything narrows to one room, one body, one head of hair. Delilah gets him to sleep. That sentence sounds simple. It is not simple. This is not merely rest. It is surrender, the kind that happens when familiarity has done its work and danger has become furniture. Samson lays his head in her lap. There it is, the image that survives because it is so intimate and so awful. The strong man resting in the place he should least trust, like a child, like a lover, like a fool who thinks softness cannot kill him. His hair spills over her knees. You can imagine the weight of it, warm, oiled maybe, or at least carrying the smell of sweat, sun, and long travel. Thick ropes of hair against woven fabric. Delilah sitting very still beneath that burden while his breathing deepens. The room hears everything. The small creak of someone shifting position, the faint crackle of the lamp, a night insect tapping stupidly against the wall, the long, slow snore of a man who has finally stopped being careful. Then the barber is called, or a man with shears, a servant. Somebody trusted with a job that sounds absurd until you remember soldiers are waiting nearby and money is stacked in the corner. He enters quietly. Imagine his face. Imagine being summoned for this. Not to trim a merchant before a wedding or tidy a child's hair in the yard. No, you are sneaking up on Samson in his sleep with metal blades and a prayer that he does not wake up halfway through. The shears gleam in the lamplight. Iron blades, hinged and practical, made for wool, hair, and the occasional life-altering betrayal. They open and close with a sound far too small for what is happening. A soft metallic bite. Snip. Another. Locks begin to fall. Heavy strands landing on Delilah's robe, on the floor, across the bedding. Dead weight now. Just hair. It is almost insulting. Strength leaves so quietly. No thunderclap, no earthquake, no dramatic gust blowing open the door, just snipping. A sleeping man. Hair accumulating in dark heaps. The silence of power going out of a room one careful cut at a time. You want it to look bigger than this. More ceremonial, more obviously catastrophic. Instead, it happens with the dull efficiency of laundry being folded. Delilah lets the work finish. 7 locks gone. His head feels lighter in sleep, though he does not know why. The skin of his scalp, newly exposed, catches the night air. There is something indecent about how ordinary he looks now. Not monstrous, not magical, just a man asleep in a woman's lap while all the wrong people hold their breath around him. Then she says it. "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He wakes as he always has, probably with that same instant surge of confidence. I'll go out as before, he thinks. I'll shake myself free. The old routine, the same trick, same body, same result. But this time there is a terrible blank where certainty used to be. He rises into weakness. That is the horror of it. Not dramatic pain at first, just failure. Muscles not answering with their old impossible force. Hands that cannot do what they used to do. The body suddenly ordinary at the exact worst moment. It is like stepping onto a stair you are certain is there and finding nothing but air. The Philistines come in fast. No more hiding. No more crouching behind partitions feeling silly. Now they rush him with all the confidence of men who know the giant has become meat. Hands seize him. Ropes bite into wrists. Shouts fill the room. Sandals skid. Somebody knocks over a jar. Oil spreads dark across the floor and carries the smell of olives into the panic. Samson struggles, but the old strength is gone. And Delilah is right there. Maybe she stands. Maybe she steps back quickly to keep from being hit in the scramble. Maybe her face gives nothing away. Maybe it gives everything away for one flashing second and then closes again. The room that held flirtation, laughter, lies, and sleep is now full of armed men and the breathless noise of capture. A household can change its purpose very quickly. They bind him. The ropes hold this time. That alone feels obscene after all the games before. Rope against skin, rough and final. Men crowding close now that courage is no longer expensive. There is a particular ugliness in the way fear turns to swagger the second danger drops. 1 minute they were hiding behind walls. Now they are barking orders like they personally invented bravery. Then it gets worse, because ancient vengeance is rarely content with arrest. They seize him and gouge out his eyes. You flinch even before it happens. The details are ugly because of course they are ugly. Hands pinning his head, the smell of sweat and panic and lamp smoke, a cry ripped raw, blood where sight used to be. Some acts leave a room changed forever. After that, the valley road, down from the house, away from Delilah, away from Sorek, dust underfoot, guards on either side. Samson stumbling blind, face ruined, the heat on his skin harsher now that darkness has become permanent. People stare as he passes. Some recoil, some gawk, some look with the flat, practical expression of those who have learned not to be surprised by public misery. They take him to Gaza. A prison waits, because there is always more humiliation available when enemies are feeling creative. Bronze shackles, grinding grain, round and round at the mill like an animal. The giant reduced to labor so repetitive it can empty a mind. Dust in the throat, chaff in the nose, the smell of sweat, stone, and old captivity baked together in heat that never quite leaves the walls. You can almost hear the millstone. Heavy, circular, mercilessly dull. That scraping grind hour after hour, the soundtrack of a fallen man. This is what is left after the flirting, the riddles, the games, the nights in Delilah's house. Not romance, not triumph, just a blind prisoner pushing weight in circles while the people who feared him laugh. But the story is not done with his hair. It starts growing back, quietly, because hair does that. It does not care about empires or betrayal or military victory. It simply returns. A little roughness on the scalp, then length, then more. In prison, even stripped of sight and freedom, the body keeps on with its stubborn little business. Cells divide, nails grow, hair returns. The human creature is oddly persistent that way. Still, Delilah's part is complete. She does not go with him to Gaza. She does not appear wringing her hands in remorse or delivering one final speech from a balcony. She remains in Sorek in memory, in the room where scissors clicked and a nation's enemy became manageable. Her name settles into history with that peculiar kind of immortality reserved for people associated forever with one unforgettable act. And what an act! Not battlefield glory, not a queen ordering death from a throne. A woman in a private room. Soft questions, persistent pressure, hidden silver, a lap, a pair of shears. It is domestic space weaponized so thoroughly that even a bed starts to look suspicious. After Delilah, no man with any sense should hear, "Tell me your secret," without developing immediate heartburn. That is why she lasts. You remember the textures around her, woven bedding, rope fibers, the warm weight of a sleeping head, silver hidden under cloth, a low lamp making everything golden and dangerous. Love talk curdled into interrogation, tenderness acting as a delivery system for ruin. It is almost too intimate to be believed, which is exactly why nobody forgets it. And Samson helps make her unforgettable by being so magnificently, almost artistically foolish. He treats betrayal like banter. He mistakes repeated attempted capture for relationship turbulence. He hears the same question over and over and still keeps answering like a man at a festival booth trying to win a painted jug. By the time the shears come out, you are half horrified and half wanting to grab him by the shoulders and shout, "My friend, there have been clues." But he sleeps. That may be the saddest part. Not the boasting, not even the lies. The sleep, trust or exhaustion, or some fatal mixture of vanity and longing, lowering his guard completely, laying his head down where danger has already introduced itself several times. There is something so human in that kind of doomed familiarity. People get used to what should scare them. They start calling it normal, They make tea in the middle of a burning house. So the valley of Sorek keeps its reputation. Sticky heat, vineyards, border dust. The place where desire and danger sat on the same cushion and smiled at each other. Somewhere in that valley, evening still falls over terraces and stone paths. Wind still moves through the vines. Lamps are lit, doors are closed. Gentle voices still ask questions in rooms where someone really ought to be more careful. And in the dark, you can still hear it. The tiny metallic bite of shears, the sudden cry, the shuffle of men surging from hiding, the shocked silence of strength not arriving when called, and a name that clings like burrs to the hem of memory, Delilah. The years roll forward, the empires change, and somehow the feasts become even more dangerous. The smell hits first. Not one smell. A whole attacking army of them. Roasted lamb dripping fat onto hot platters. Fish sauce. Wine spilled into rushes on the floor 3 cups ago and now turning sour. Sweating men packed shoulder to shoulder under torch smoke. Perfume so heavy it feels like being slapped with flowers. And under all of it, the old dependable bass note of sandals, dust and bodies that have been marinating in linen since sunrise. You step into Herod's banquet hall and immediately understand that nobody here is making good decisions. The room glows gold in all the wrong ways. Lamps flare against polished surfaces. Bronze bowls shine. Jewels flash on thick fingers wrapped around cups. Servants slide between couches carrying trays of figs, dates, flatbread, spiced meat, little bowls of herbs, and more wine. Always more wine, because apparently the answer to every political insecurity in this household is another refill. Herod wants this night to look impressive. That much is obvious before you even see him. The whole place has the frantic energy of a man trying to convince everyone, including himself, that he is absolutely in control. It is the royal version of inviting people over and lighting 6 extra lamps so maybe they will not notice the mildew. Only in this case the mildew is moral collapse, family scandal, and a prison cell with a prophet in it. You feel it in the room. The soldiers along the edges stand too stiff. The officials laugh too loudly. The local nobles eye one another over their cups like men playing a game with knives under the table. Every joke lands half a heartbeat late because each person is checking whether it is safe to laugh first. Even the music sounds cautious, piped out on strings and reed flutes by hired players who know perfectly well that one bad note in a room full of drunk, powerful men can become a very bad evening. And there he is. Herod reclines where everyone can see him, jeweled and satisfied, and not nearly as relaxed as he wants to appear. His beard is trimmed, his robe is expensive, his posture says king. Everything else says man who has spent years balancing on a stack of bad choices and calling it a throne. Across from him sits Herodias. You notice her because the room notices her. Some people do not look directly, some look too directly. Her presence lands like perfume, spilled in a small chamber, sharp, inescapable. She wears wealth the way other people wear a knife, which is to say, deliberately. The bracelets, the arranged hair, the steady face, the eyes that miss nothing. This is a woman who has already walked through public scandal and decided she will not be the one acting embarrassed. Fair enough. The trouble with Herodias is that she has one of those faces people immediately start blaming for everything. Men start wars over inheritance, marriage, territory, and ego the size of grain silos. And somehow, a woman in good earrings becomes the problem. It happens constantly. Ancient courts are basically one long group project where the men fail upward and the women get the nickname. But the air around her tonight has an extra edge, because somewhere not far from this feast, stone walls hold a prisoner. John, the wilderness preacher, the man with the rough clothes and rougher tongue, the one who looked at this elegant, expensive arrangement of marriage and power and said, in essence, absolutely not. Not discreetly, not in a whisper, publicly, repeatedly. The kind of man who hears a royal title and treats it as an invitation to become louder. You can see why this has not improved the mood. Nobody at this banquet says his name casually. It hangs there anyway, invisible and irritating, like smoke that got into the draperies. Herod heard him. Herod feared him. Herod kept him alive. Herodias wanted him gone. And now all of that tension has been brought into a room full of wine, pride, and spectators, which, as plans go, is terrible. Historic, perhaps. Sensible, never. Servants move past you with another tray. The meat glistens. The bread is warm. The dates are split and stuffed with nuts. Somewhere nearby, a dish of honey has overturned, and flies have already arrived like tiny black tax collectors. A man wipes grease onto his beard and keeps talking. Another is red-faced and gesturing with a cup. Someone has dropped olive pits under a table. A sandal sticks briefly to the floor when you step, which is deeply offensive. The music picks up. Not joyful exactly. More like expensive. The kind of polished sound that says somebody paid for this atmosphere and fully intends to use it. Heads turn. Conversations keep going, but now they have that distracted fray at the edges. People are waiting for the next amusement. A banquet this swollen with self-importance cannot simply coast on lamb and wine. It needs a spectacle. It needs a moment. Then the evening tips from gaudy to dangerous. The girl enters. She is young. Not a woman established in power like her mother. Not some silver-haired schemer lounging behind a curtain. A girl stepping into a room designed by adults, watched by men old enough to know better and very possibly too drunk to care. The lamps catch the movement of fabric. Bracelets chime. Anklets flash. The musicians adjust instantly because, of course, they do. Everyone with any sense in the room knows that the evening has just tipped. You feel the attention gather. It is almost physical. Faces turn. Cups pause. A hand that was halfway to a fig stops in the air. The room narrows. That is the ugly thing about this kind of spectacle. Everyone pretends it is normal because there are musicians and silk and official guests and polished cups. But strip away the decoration and you still have a child performing in a hall full of powerful men while politics sits there grinning into its wine. The dance begins. You hear cloth whisper over the floor, a turn of the wrist, a measured step, music folding around movement. Maybe she learned every angle. Maybe she knows exactly how to pace a room and hold a gaze for one heartbeat, and then move on. Maybe she is simply doing what she has been told beautifully enough to make everybody else assign motives to her afterward. People are very efficient that way. They can take one dance and turn it into enough scandal to feed generations. The guests are delighted. Of course they are. Their eyes shine. Their mouths soften with drink and amusement. A few lean forward on their couches. One old commander gives a laugh that suggests his soul has lived in a wineskin for years. Another man murmurs something to his neighbor, and both smirk in the way men do when they think their own faces are hidden by the mere fact of torchlight. They are not hidden. Nothing in this room is hidden. It is all just varnished. Herod watches too closely. That is the detail that curdles everything. He is pleased in the showy, public way of a ruler, desperate to display abundance. Look at this hall. Look at this household. Look at the refinement, the luxury, the grace. Please do not look at the prison prophet, the disputed marriage, the Roman leash around my neck, or the fact that half my authority depends on other men finding me useful. Look at the dance instead. Look how splendid my table is. The music swells. She turns. The jewelry catches firelight. The fabric lifts and settles again. The room drinks it in. Somewhere behind you, a servant nearly collides with another because both are trying not to stare while absolutely staring. A platter tilts. Sauce sloshes. Nobody important notices. The dance ends. For half a breath, there is silence. Then the room bursts. Applause, voices, cups struck against low tables, men grinning through wine. Herod is flushed now, excited and expansive, and drunk enough to feel majestic, which is always a dangerous amount of drunk. Sober men make bad promises. Drunk rulers make promises with witnesses. He calls to her. The words land loudly, because naturally this must be public. Public men adore public generosity when somebody else will pay for it later. He swears an oath. Grand, open-handed, theatrical. Ask me whatever you want, he says, up to half my kingdom, half his kingdom. You hear it and nearly laugh, because this is the banquet equivalent of a man on his fourth cup declaring he will buy everyone horses. He is not giving away half a kingdom. He is putting on a performance of being the kind of man who could. It is pure royal peacocking. Feathers up, brain down. Still, oaths are not harmless in this room. Not with guests listening. Not with honor inflated to absurd size. Not when a ruler has built so much of his life on appearances that he would probably bleed to death before admitting he misspoke. The words go out into the hall and hang there. Everyone hears them. Everyone stores them away. You can almost see Herodias go still. The girl does not answer at once. She leaves, just like that. The room, overheated and humming, must wait while the center of its spectacle slips away into the corridor. Music falters. Guests exchange glances. Somebody reaches for more wine, because what else are you going to do while the household reorganizes itself around one bad oath? You follow, not openly, more with the current of servants and attendants and the general magnetic pull of disaster. The corridor beyond the banquet hall is cooler, though not fresh. Nothing in a palace is fresh. It smells of oil, old stone, stored fabrics, stale incense, and the ghost of every meal ever carried through it. Torches spit in their brackets. Sandals slap the floor. Voices lower, because this is the part where decisions get made by family in corners, while everybody else pretends not to listen. The girl finds her mother. Herodias does not waste time. No dramatic hand to the chest. No pretending she needs a moment. The answer is ready because she has likely been carrying it around like a sharpened pin. Ask for the head of John the Baptist. Here. Now. On a platter. There it is. No poetry. No veil over it. Not justice. Not debate. Not exile. A head. On a serving dish. As practical and horrifying as ordering fruit. You feel the corridor change. A servant nearby looks down at once, as if staring at the floor might protect him from becoming part of this. Another freezes with folded cloth over one arm. Somewhere farther down, a door closes softly. Even the torch crackle seems rude now. Herodias's face remains set. The girl receives the words. That is one of the bleakest parts. The request is so specific, so domestic in its violence. Not merely kill him, plate him. The banquet waits behind you. Laughter from the hall still leaks through the doorway in bursts. Someone calls for more wine. A musician tests a string. The room of pleasure and boasting carries on for another few seconds, completely unaware that dinner entertainment is being converted into death paperwork just beyond the wall. Human beings are remarkable that way. They can be chewing lamb while catastrophe gets dressed nearby. The girl returns to the hall. Every eye follows her again. It must feel like walking into hot light after standing in shadow. Herod, still grand with his own oath, looks pleased to resume the show. He expects a jewel, a villa, some embroidered nonsense, maybe a favor for her mother. He does not expect the room to go cold. She speaks. "Give me, here on a platter, the head of John the Baptist." The words fall like a dropped blade. You can feel the recoil. It is not loud at first. That is what makes it worse. A hush runs across the couches. A hand lowers a cup. One guest stares. Another suddenly becomes fascinated by his olives. The musicians do not know whether to stop, which is a miserable position for any flautist to be in. One thin note leaks out and dies. Herod's face changes. There it is. The sober part of him lurching awake too late. Distress flashes across him. Not because he has discovered a conscience from scratch exactly. More because all his private fears have just been dragged into public view wearing no sandals. He did not want this. He feared John. He also respected him in that baffled way weak men sometimes respect stronger souls from a safe distance. The prophet disturbed him, but the disturbance had a shape he could not dismiss. Now the room is watching, and that matters more than it should, more than mercy, more than restraint, more than a prisoner's neck. The guests have heard the oath. The ruler cannot be seen to retreat. He is trapped by the thing he values most, the appearance of not being trapped. It is almost embarrassing how often everything comes down to one man refusing to look foolish over dinner. Herod hesitates. That heartbeat matters. You can almost imagine another ending fitting into it. A laugh, a refusal. Not tonight. Ask something else. Even tyrants have moments where the road forks and one path has less blood on it. But this hall is full of men whose opinion he cannot bear to lose, and the machinery of cowardice is already grinding into motion. He gives the order. Just like that. A gesture, a command to a guard, a life converted into banquet logistics. The same mouth that ordered music now orders death. The same room that praised a dance receives an execution notice. Nobody stands up and overturns a table. Nobody says absolutely not. They remain on their couches among grease and wine fumes while a soldier heads for the prison because dinner has taken a dark administrative turn. You go with him, down the corridor, past side chambers and shadowed servants and doors barred against drafts. Away from the banquet brightness into the palace underbelly where stone begins to sweat and the air cools in a mean, damp way. The smells change as you descend. Less perfume now. More mildew, wet mortar, old straw, iron, and the sour human heaviness of enclosed places. A torch smokes. Water drips somewhere with patient irritation. The guard is not dramatic. That makes it worse. He is not a monster foaming at the mouth, just a man with a job from a ruler during a banquet. Sandals scraping stone, hand on weapon, face set in that dull official look people wear when they do not want their thoughts involved. There is a terrible efficiency in it. No thunder, no speech, just state violence in workmanlike sandals. At the cell, the air is foul. You smell unwashed bodies, damp wool, chamber pots emptied badly, rust and old bread. The prison is all rough wall and bad light. It feels like the inside of a toothache. John is there, the wilderness man reduced to a cell by frightened power. Maybe he rises. Maybe he already knows from the steps. Maybe he has lived so near danger for so long that the sound of armed men in a corridor is simply another line in the day. No banquet noise reaches this deep. That part is almost unbearable. Above, men recline on cushions, wiping grease from their fingers. Below, a prophet waits in stone silence while somebody's birthday oath arrives in armor. The worlds touch only for a moment, and the touch kills. The execution is quick. It would have to be. Banquets hate delay. There are guests to impress, wine to pour, a ruler's dignity to maintain. The guard does what he came to do. Metal, movement, finality. A body collapses into straw. The cell, already ugly, becomes uglier in a way stone remembers. Blood has a smell. Hot iron and salt, and something so immediate it cuts through mildew and piss and torch smoke alike. Then comes the practical horror. A platter is fetched, not a sacred vessel, not some ceremonial object separated from ordinary use. A dish from the machinery of serving, the kind that held fruit, bread, meat, sweets. That is what makes the whole thing feel especially diseased. Household items are being reassigned. Dinnerware has joined the murder. Somewhere in this palace there is likely a steward whose evening just became complicated in the most evil way imaginable. The head is placed on the platter. No one can make that respectable. No silk can soften it. No title can redeem it. A human face severed and arranged for presentation is the end point of every rotten current in the building. Pride, lust for approval, family grievance, political fear, public oath, weakness wearing jewelry. It all arrives here, on a dish. The guard carries it back, up the corridor. Torchlight jumps over the metal rim. Shadows move over the dead face. Servants flatten themselves against walls. No one wants to be the one who bumps into that tray. Can you imagine? There are bad shifts at work, and then there is accidentally colliding with an execution platter because the ruler couldn't manage his mouth at supper. The banquet hall doors open. Sound rushes out first. Then it falters as the tray enters. You can feel the room's appetite trip over itself. Guests who loved the oath a few minutes ago now have to deal with the invoice. Some stare because human beings are terrible at not staring. Some look away so hard their necks nearly creak. One man clears his throat. Another drinks immediately, which feels about right for this crowd. The platter is given to the girl. That detail lands with sick precision, not set before Herod, not presented to Herodias directly at first, given to the girl. The child who danced is now made courier of a death. She receives the dish and carries it to her mother. The room watches the transfer. Family ambition becomes domestic routine. Pass the bread, bring the wine, carry the severed head. Herodias gets what she wanted. No smile is required. The result is enough. The prophet who denounced her is silenced. The voice in the wilderness, the voice in the prison, the voice that would not flatter or shut up, is gone because one ruler needed to save face and one household knew exactly how to use that need. It is all horribly efficient. The feast limps on. What else can it do? Powerful people are astonishingly committed to continuing meals after unspeakable acts. A little awkwardness, perhaps. more drinking, lower voices. Someone requests music again because silence has become accusatory. Platters return. Bread is torn. Meat cools. Grease congeals. A torch gutters and spits. Life in corrupt courts does not stop for moral nausea. You stand there thinking this may be the worst birthday party in the region. And that is saying something. All the ingredients were present from the beginning. A ruler desperate to impress. Guests eager for spectacle. A family already tangled in resentment. A prisoner whose honesty had become intolerable. Put that together with wine and public ego, and you get the ancient equivalent of handing fireworks to a toddler beside an oil shed. Somewhere outside the palace, night stretches over the city. Ordinary people are finishing plain suppers. A mother scrapes a pot. A laborer rubs his feet. Dogs nose through refuse. Someone closes a shop shutter. Someone coughs under a blanket. And inside the palace, torchlight gleams off a platter that should never have held what it held. Power loves insulation. It does monstrous things within walls while everybody else is still trying to get tomorrow's bread. News does not stay inside. It leaks. Of course it leaks. Servants know. Guards know. Musicians know. One horrified attendant tells another in the passage. A kitchen worker hears it while rinsing dishes in greasy water. A soldier mutters it to a companion changing watch. By dawn, the story is moving through the city on human tongues, gathering detail, disbelief, disgust. Banquet, dance, oath, head, platter. Those words stick together instantly. And in another place, his followers hear. You can almost feel that moment too. The blow of it, the stunned pause, the scramble to confirm what nobody wants confirmed. Then the grim duty afterward. Go to the prison, ask for the body, lift what remains, wrap it, carry the dead weight of a man who once stood in river water, shouting for repentance while crowds pressed close on muddy banks. Death always becomes physical very fast. Linen, hands, burial. Grief has chores. Back in the palace, the lamps burn lower. The guests thin out. Heavy-footed men leave with wine on their breath. Officials tug their robes straight and prepare to remember the evening selectively. Servants begin the real work. Scrape bones, mop spills, gather cups, sweep rushes stiff with grease and trampled herbs, remove the leftovers, air the hall if possible, though no amount of airing will help what this room has hosted. The floor is sticky. Of course it is. Spilled wine, dripped fat, honey, fruit mash, tracked dirt, ash from torches. Sandals pull against it as servants move around with buckets and cloths. Somebody wipes a low table and pauses, staring at nothing. Another worker collects abandoned olives in a bowl with the exhausted face of a person who did not expect to process an execution and dishwashing in the same shift. Herod is left with himself. That is not a pleasant place for anyone to be. The wine warmth fades. The guests are gone. The oath cannot be unsaid. The prophet cannot be reattached. When the noise drains out, he is left alone with the dark room and the memory of what he ordered. He wanted to appear magnificent for one evening. Instead, he gave history one of its grimmest dinner stories. As for Salome, though people will keep arguing over her name, age, intentions and expression for centuries, tonight leaves its stain on her too. A girl enters for a dance. A girl exits carrying death. That pivot is the whole nightmare. She becomes fused to the moment because history is mercilessly lazy. It takes one scene and nails a person to it forever. Never mind the adults around her. Never mind the household that trained, arranged, asked, ordered, and consumed. The image sticks. The dancer, the request, the platter. One night, and your name gets wrapped around male fear and fascination, like ivy around a cracked wall. And now, you can feel the story hardening. People will retell it with widening eyes. The dance will grow more dangerous in the telling. The girl more deliberate. The mother colder. The ruler weaker. The platter brighter. That is what happens when a scene already arrives over-furnished with horror. Time adds extra cushions. But even without embellishment, the core is ugly enough. Entertainment turned execution. An oath turned trap. A ruler who feared holiness more softly than he feared embarrassment. That last part lingers. A lot of terrible things in palaces start with vanity. Then come the bloodstains. Not grand ideology, not glorious battle. Just some overdressed man who cannot bear to look foolish in front of his dinner guests. It would almost be funny if the consequences were not so terminal. The night deepens. The torches are finally snuffed one by one. Smoke lifts and clings to the beams. The last servants shuffle out, carrying stacked dishes and empty jars. Somewhere a bolt slides shut. Somewhere sandals retreat down a corridor. The music is gone. The boasting is gone. The hall sits in a sour after-silence smelling of meat fat, extinguished flame, and whatever remains when pleasure has gone rotten. You stand at the threshold a moment longer. In your mind, the whole evening still flickers. The gold light, the cups raised, the watched dance, the oath tossed out like a coin by a man who thought words were decorations, the cold request, the soldier descending, the prison stone, the tray returning. It all happened so quickly. That is another ugly truth. Some reputations take years to build, and some disasters need only one stupid sentence spoken loudly after enough wine. Beyond the hall, dawn will come eventually. Servants will open shutters. Fresh air, if the gods of ventilation are feeling generous, will push through the chambers. New food will be prepared. New orders will be given. The machinery of rule will keep turning because palaces do not collapse every time they deserve to. They go on. That is part of their horror. The walls remain standing long after the people inside have made themselves monstrous. But names outlive walls. John's name will travel. Herod's too, though not in the way he wanted. Herodias will remain fixed in memory, hard and formidable. And the girl at the center of the turning moment will be remembered for the dance and the request and the platter, whether or not any later teller can resist adding extra silk, extra seduction, extra blame. That is how forbidden names survive. They gather torchlight around themselves. And once a banquet like this happens, it keeps happening in memory. You can still smell it. The wine fumes, the roast meat, the torch smoke, the human sweat under expensive perfume. You can still hear the cups strike the table, the oath rolling out too grandly, the hush after the request. You can still see the servant in the corridor trying very hard to become part of the wall. Some stories begin in deserts, some begin in nurseries. This one begins in a banquet hall so overstuffed with luxury and nerves that it practically sweats through the plaster. A ruler wants to be admired. A household wants a voice silenced. A girl dances. A room applauds. And before the grease cools on the platters, a prophet is dead, and everyone has to sit there pretending the evening is still elegant. It never was. It was always one spark away from becoming what it became. A feast with murder hidden under the garnish. A glittering room where weakness dressed itself as grandeur and called for music. A birthday remembered not for gifts or laughter, but for the moment A serving platter carried something no table should ever welcome. The palace is dark now. Only a few late lamps glow in distant chambers. The corridors have emptied. The prison below sits still again, stone holding the last of the night's cold. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, dawn waits over roofs and alleys and sleeping courtyards. The feast is over. The oath is spent. The platter has been cleared away, but the stain of it remains. And somewhere, the story continues. The smell changes before the words do. You leave the banquet hall, the prison yard, the palace window, the hot little room with the shears, and step into the long hallway of memory. It smells less like blood now and more like people. Bread crusts, lamp smoke, damp wool, garlic on somebody's breath. A baby leaking from both ends in the corner because ancient life is glamorous like that. And after the banquets and bedrooms and blood, the stories keep walking without their owners. You hear them first at a fire. Night has settled over a courtyard, and everyone is sitting close because darkness outside the lamplight still feels personal. The stew is thin. The bread is hard enough to qualify as building material. Somebody's grandmother clears her throat, adjusts her shawl, and says a name in the same tone people use for snakes under laundry piles. Jezebel. The children go still. Not because they know all the details. They don't. They know the shape of the warning, and that is usually enough. A painted face. A dangerous woman. A queen who looked out from a window and met a bad end. You can see it happening right there, in real time, as a life gets shaved down into a caution label and slapped onto future daughters like a cracked clay jar marked "Do Not Shake." Nobody says, well, she was also a foreign bride dropped into a hostile court. Nobody says, palace politics were filthy and everybody involved needed a long bath and probably a conscience. No. By the fire, the story has gotten efficient. A wife speaks too sharply to her husband in the next house over, and someone mutters, "She's got Jezebel in her." A woman wears more coal than the village approves of, and suddenly it's Jezebel again. A queen from long ago has become a kind of communal emergency brake. Pull this name whenever female confidence needs reducing. It works beautifully. By beautifully, I mean terribly. You can watch the process happen in marketplaces. The market is where reputations go to be deep fried in old oil and sold by the handful. You squeeze past baskets of onions, fish guts turning noble in the sun, donkey droppings, and one suspicious puddle nobody claims. Two women are arguing over dyed cloth. One leans in and hisses, "Don't strut at me like Jezebel." There it is. Not a person anymore. A shortcut. A single word that means vain, dangerous, foreign, seductive, overreaching, troublesome, probably expensive, and definitely not to be trusted around power. It's the ancient version of turning someone's whole existence into a nasty little meme. And you realize how names stop belonging to the people who first carried them. A real body once had that name. Real hands. Real hunger. Real headaches. Real mornings where the hair did not cooperate, and the servants were slow, and the city smelled like hot stone and horse. Then, centuries pass, and now the name floats loose like smoke, entering any room where somebody wants to scold a woman for taking up too much space. So Jezebel keeps getting reborn. Not in palaces now, in sermons. You stand at the edge of a crowd while a preacher with dust on his hems and thunder in his lungs points a finger hard enough to stab the air. Sweat shines on his forehead. Flies orbit him with the devotion of tiny demonic satellites. He warns the people against corruption, idolatry, painted eyes, soft luxury, dangerous wives, false worship, foreign influence, all the usual nightmare buffet. And there it is again. Jezebel. The crowd murmurs. They know that one. A few men nod with the deep satisfaction of people who love a warning that applies mostly to someone else. A few women stare at the ground. One teenage girl, wearing the one bright scarf she owns, slowly untucks it and folds it smaller. The name has done its work. It has entered the room and rearranged shoulders. That is how her name survives after the dogs have done their foul work. Not in flesh, in accusation. And now Delilah. Oh, Delilah has a different afterlife entirely. Jezebel becomes political poison. Delilah becomes bedroom poison. You hear her name in the low voice people use when discussing romantic catastrophes with the solemnity of military defeat. You know the tone. A man did something stupid because a pretty woman smiled at him, and now everyone wants a biblical label for the disaster because apparently just saying he was an idiot feels too simple. So they say, Delilah. You are in a workshop now where men plane wood and complain. Sawdust floats in the light. Sweat runs down backs. Somebody has pinched his thumb under a beam and is behaving as though death itself has entered the carpentry trade. In the middle of all this masculine dignity, one man grumbles that his cousin has started ignoring his friends because of a woman from the next town. Another man snorts. Delilah. Instant understanding. They don't need to explain. The name now means the whole package. Seduction, betrayal, softness, hiding danger, pillow talk with a knife behind it. A man laughing off warnings until his strength walks out the door wearing his own bad decisions. Delilah has become what people call any woman they think can talk a fool right out of his future. It's almost impressive. One haircut, and now your name is permanent shorthand for catastrophic taste in women. At a wedding feast, a bride's aunt leans too close and whispers to the groom, half joking and half not. Don't let her Delilah you. He laughs because he is supposed to. The bride smiles with all her teeth, which does not help. Everyone drinks more wine and pretends this is charming. In another house, much less cheerful, a mother warns her son not to linger near a widow who lives alone. She's a Delilah. The son has never met her. Doesn't matter. The label arrives first, like bad weather. And Delilah becomes useful in jealous mouths. A husband sees his wife talking too long with a trader. Delilah? A girl asks too many questions. Delilah? A woman knows exactly how to persuade. Delilah. The name starts doing more work than a farm donkey in harvest season. Never mind that persuasion is not exactly a rare female invention. Never mind that Samson himself treated danger like a tavern game and had the self-preservation instincts of a turnip. In memory, the woman's voice gets louder, the man's stupidity gets softer, and somehow everyone acts like this was a mystery. You can hear the retelling around the evening meal. By now, the story has picked up extra sauce. The lap becomes more intimate. The betrayal gets silkier. The shears gleam more dramatically each time, despite most actual shears being dull little misery devices that snag and chew. People tell it with relish. A little scandal keeps the lentils interesting. The children listen, wide-eyed. The boys hear, guard your strength. The girls hear, your charm is dangerous, and everyone will blame you for knowing it. No one prints pamphlets. The lesson still lands. And then there is Salome, or rather, the girl people in the courtyard reduce to the dance before they remember anything else about her. Which, frankly, is rough. Imagine having one evening of your life become your entire brand forever. Not your childhood, not your family, not the weird little games you played in the courtyard, not your favorite food, not whether you liked figs or hated sandals in summer. Just one dance at one banquet in one hall full of drunk men marinating in roast lamb grease and bad judgment. Now forever you are that girl. You hear the scene retold in places that have never seen a royal hall. A traveling speaker arrives at a synagogue courtyard. Dust clings to his ankles. He has that lean, intense look of a man who survives mainly on conviction and whatever people hand him in bowls. He starts warning against rash vows, wicked courts, lust, spectacle, women who entertain men into ruin, the whole sticky, tragic business. Before long, the dancing girl appears again, carrying the platter whether she wants to or not. Every retelling adds lacquer. The dance becomes slower, more deliberate, more loaded. The banquet guests become more depraved, which, to be fair, is not hard. The girl herself turns into a symbol before your eyes. Not a person moving through family pressure and court filth, but desire in ankle bracelets. Youth with deadly consequences. Entertainment with a body count. And that's the part nobody says out loud. The room where her name is spoken is almost always full of adults who made the real decisions. The ruler swore the oath. The court created the pressure. The prison held the profit. The executioner did the work. But somehow the girl with the dance becomes the warning poster everyone hangs in the hallway. You can feel that unfairness in the way women talk about her. Not publicly. Publicly, they say the safe things. Privately, grinding grain shoulder to shoulder, they mutter differently. The stone wheel groans. Flour dust coats their forearms. Their backs hurt. One woman says, "Poor child." Another says, "Poor? She asked for it." A third says nothing, just presses her mouth tight and keeps grinding. Because they all know what it is to be looked at in a room where men are deciding who you are. Still, the name sticks. Salome becomes what people invoke when beauty and performance make them nervous. A dancing body, a dangerous request. The moment entertainment stops being fun and turns into a blade on a platter. Her name enters the bloodstream of warning tales, where parents use it for daughters, preachers use it for temptation, and rulers quietly avoid mentioning how much of the disaster was their own spinelessness in a nice robe. Then there is Lilith, who slips through memory differently from all the rest. Jezebel stomps in through the front gate, wearing perfume and a political reputation. Delilah reclines in the doorway of romantic disaster. Salome twirls through torchlight and oath fumes. Lilith comes in through the crack under the door. You don't hear her name first in courts or marketplaces. You hear it in nurseries. The room is hot and close. The lamp is burning smoky because the wick is trimmed badly. Milk has soured in a bowl nearby. Sweat sticks the baby hair to the back of a mother's neck. She has not slept properly in days. Her eyes have that hollow, hunted look of someone who would gladly fist-fight a ghost if it meant 20 minutes of silence. A draft touches the room. The baby startles. The mother turns her head. On the wall hangs an amulet, scratched with names and signs, dangling above a cradle that creaks every time the child so much as blinks aggressively. Someone has warned her. Someone always does. Keep the room watched. Mind the windows. Guard the child from Lilith. And there she is. Not exactly in the sacred stories people recite by daylight, but close enough to their edges to become everybody's night problem. The kind of figure who grows in the damp corners between scripture, rumor, exhaustion, and grief. A baby dies, and the family needs a shape for the terror. A mother feels a weight on her chest in the middle of the night and cannot move. A man wakes from a dream, flushed and ashamed. The desert wind scratches the door. Lilith gets the blame. Once a name enters that territory, good luck getting rid of it. Now old women know how to speak about her. Midwives know what charms to hang. Fathers, who are otherwise spectacularly unhelpful at 3 a.m, suddenly become experts on muttering protective words over doorposts, while the mother does all the actual surviving. You hear Lilith in the mutter of nursery fear. Cover the child. Don't leave the lamp out. Hang the amulet straight. Was that the wind? Don't say her name too loudly. People swear they know someone who knew someone who felt her in the room. That is how folklore fattens itself. One story picks up another like burrs on a cloak. A widow in one town says she heard wings. A shepherd says he saw a shape near the wells. A mother grieving an infant says the air changed and the lamp guttered. By the time the story reaches the next village, Lilith is practically renting property there. And unlike the others, she has the advantage of never needing one fixed face. A queen can be described. A lover can be pictured. A dancing girl can be painted in words. Lilith can be whatever the night requires. Beautiful if the warning is about seduction. Monstrous if the warning is about babies. Winged, wild-haired, clawed, whispering, barren, fertile, jealous, hungry, all-purpose nightmare equipment. She slips between forms because fear does that. Fear hates a tidy costume. Fear likes options. So while Jezebel gets attached to bold women and Delilah to dangerous affection and Salome to lethal spectacle, Lilith gets attached to darkness itself. A window rattles. Lilith. A newborn sickens. Lilith. A man dreams something embarrassing and blames literally anyone but himself. Astonishingly, Lilith. You almost have to admire the range. And once all 4 names are loose in the world, they start colliding with ordinary life in ways that would be funny if they weren't so exhausting. You are in a cramped house where 2 sisters are fighting while kneading bread. The dough is sticking to everything, including one sister's bracelet and, somehow, her eyebrow. They are hot, irritated, and one insult away from homicide by rolling pin. The older sister says the younger has painted herself like Jezebel. The younger fires back that at least she is not sneaking around like Delilah. Their mother, trying to hush a crying infant, snaps that if they don't lower their voices, they'll wake the child and invite Lilith in. There you have it. 1 household argument, 3 legendary women, and absolutely no one becoming more reasonable. You hear the names in jealous mutters too. Those are some of the sharpest. Jealousy does not need much furniture, just a suspicion, a face, and a name ready to throw. A woman sees another woman laughing with her husband near the well. The laugh goes on half a heartbeat too long. Water sloshes. Someone's sandal slips in mud and donkey slime. By sunset, one of them is a Jezebel. If not that, a Delilah. By next week, half the lane is choosing sides while pretending not to. You hear the names in male fear as well, which has its own particular perfume. It's a blend of sweat, ego, and wounded dignity. A man who has made a foolish choice would often rather blame a legendary woman than admit he walked willingly toward disaster with both sandals on. Much easier to say Jezebel corrupted, Delilah ensnared, Salome enticed, Lilith tempted. Much easier than I lacked judgment and strutted into catastrophe like a rooster wearing jewels. So the names become tools, quick tools, dirty tools, the kind people grab when they want to end an argument fast. You don't have to prove much once you've attached one of these names to a woman. The room fills in the rest. That is the ugly efficiency of a legend turned insult. But the names do not live only in blame. They live in fascination too. That part crackles. People lower their voices when they say these names, not just because they disapprove, but because they cannot stop looking. At firesides and feast tables, in courtyards and on road journeys, the stories keep getting retold because they carry spice. They have danger in them. Cosmetics, sex, violence, power, blood, hair, dancing, demons, windows, kings losing control, strong men collapsing like badly built shelves. Of course, people keep telling them. Ancient evenings were long, and scandal is an evergreen crop. You can feel that hunger in the listeners. A girl fetching water pauses longer than she needs to when older women begin discussing Jezebel. A boy pretending to mend a strap listens hard when men retell Delilah's betrayal for the 50th time with fresh outrage and suspicious delight. Mothers speak Lilith's name with dread, but also with that terrible magnetic pull all nightmare stories have. You hate it. You repeat it. Human beings are very consistent that way. And over time, the details harden in strange places. The face paint matters more than the policy. The haircut matters more than the man sleeping through his own downfall. The dance matters more than the ruler's oath. The demon matters more than the dead child in the crib. Memory can be unbelievably rude. It picks one glittering, horrible detail and drags it through generations like a tin cup tied behind a cart. Clatter, clatter, clatter. There goes Jezebel's makeup. There goes Delilah's lap. There goes Salome's dance. There goes Lilith at the window in the dark. Whole human lives reduced to one unforgettable image, because apparently the human mind is a gossip with a storage problem. Still, the names endure because they fit too neatly into the fears people already have. Fear of foreign women, fear of beautiful women, fear of persuasive women, fear of women in rooms with powerful men, fear of women in bedrooms, nurseries, courts, and doorways. Fear, also, of desire making idiots out of otherwise competent adults, which, to be fair, has happened a lot. So every new generation takes the old names off the shelf and uses them again. A grandmother warning a granddaughter about vanity reaches for Jezebel. A father warning a son about seduction reaches for Delilah. A preacher trying to shame a crowd for loving spectacle reaches for Salome. A sleepless mother hearing a child cough in the dark touches the amulet and thinks of Lilith. The women are gone. Their names still keep getting dragged into other people's arguments. You feel that most strongly in the spaces between official speech and ordinary life. Not the grand courtroom, the kitchen, not the royal record, the mutter at the well, not the feast itself. The walk home afterward, sandals scraping dust, while two cousins dissect the whole scandal with merciless enthusiasm. That is where names become warnings for real, not when rulers shout them, when neighbors do. A warning name is a portable thing. You can carry it anywhere, into marriage negotiations, into mother-daughter conversations, into jokes, into insults, into prayers over cradles, into sermons where half the congregation smells faintly of sheep and the other half smells strongly of onions. Once a name becomes a warning, it no longer needs its original body. It lives parasitically in every similar fear. And now, the weirdest part. Sometimes the warning name also becomes a secret badge of fascination, even defiance. You see it in the way some women roll their eyes when a man spits out Jezebel, as though one painted eyelid is the end of civilization. You hear it in the dry little snort of an older widow when boys whisper Delilah about a woman who simply refused to be stupid. You catch it in the sympathy that clings to Salome in certain retellings, or the rough tenderness with which mothers speak of Lilith while trying to outstare death itself in the nursery. The names are heavy, but they are never fully under control. People use them to condemn, yes, but they also reveal themselves while doing it. Their fears leak out, their desires leak out, their resentments, their griefs, their need to pin chaos onto a female face and say, "There, that's the problem, now I can sleep." Even when it does not work, especially when it does not work. By now, you can hear all four names moving through the centuries like different kinds of weather. Jezebel comes hot and public, all accusation and glare. Delilah arrives close to the skin, soft-voiced and dangerous. Salome flickers in torchlight, young and watched and forever trapped mid-turn. Lilith moves in the draft, in the cradle room, in the hour before dawn when every sound feels loaded. And people keep speaking them, at firesides, in sermons, in jealous mutters, in nursery fears, over meals, in arguments, during weddings, after funerals, anywhere people need a warning with a woman's face on it. That is what lingers after the rooms go dark. Not marble tombs, not royal monuments, not official records packed away in dry rooms. This, a name dropped into conversation like a spark, a child learning to flinch at it, a grown woman hearing it and knowing exactly what accusation just entered the room, a mother touching her baby's blanket in the dark, a crowd leaning in because scandal ages well, a society stuffing its anxieties into four memorable names and passing them around until everyone swears they have always known these women personally. They haven't, of course. They know the smoke left by them. And smoke gets everywhere, into cloth, into hair, into walls, into the next generation's breathing. Long after the fire itself has burned down, the smell remains, clinging stubbornly, making the whole house remember. So, the stories keep walking. Without the queen, without the lover, without the girl, without the demon anyone can fully pin down. Just the names now, moving from mouth to mouth, warm from breath, sharpened by fear, polished by repetition, and carried onward into the next room, and the next night, and the next uneasy cradle, where memory does what it has always done. It warns, it distorts, it lingers. The lamps are lower now, and the noise of all those rooms has finally died down. You've walked through nurseries and throne rooms, banquet halls and private chambers, places that smelled like milk gone sour, cedar oil, old wine, sweat and panic. You've heard bracelets clink, sandals scrape, shears whisper, dogs snarl, and somewhere in the background, a man make one catastrophic decision after another, like he's collecting them for a hobby. So now, we can step back a little. After all of that, what were people trying to hold on to when they kept these women alive in memory? With Lilith, it starts in the dark, not the dramatic kind, not moonlight on dunes and all that. I mean the actual miserable dark, when the lamp is sputtering, the baby is burning hot or frighteningly cold, and nobody in the house knows what to do. That is the world Lilith belongs to. She became a name for terror that had nowhere sensible to go. When a child dies, and there is no clean explanation, people reach for something with claws. That's what she carried. Fear around mothers, babies, blood, sleep, and the night itself. She wasn't remembered as a neighbor or even really as a person. She became the shape of helplessness. The feeling that you can hang charms on the wall, mutter every prayer you know, stuff every crack against the draft, and still something invisible might slip in anyway. Awful. Completely awful. And that is why she endured. She gave frightened people somewhere to point, somewhere to pour all that grief and exhaustion and dread. In a world where childbirth could kill you, fever could take an infant by morning, and your medical plan was basically old women, herbs, and desperate opinions. Lilith became the face of the terror hovering over the bed. Not because people enjoyed having a demon in the room, because naming fear can feel like fighting it. Jezebel is different. Lilith belongs to the nursery at midnight. Jezebel belongs to the palace at noon, with everybody sweating through their linen and pretending things are under control. Her name became the warning label for power that arrives dressed beautifully and refuses to apologize. She carried people's fear of the foreign woman, yes, but also their fear of royal appetite with no breaks. You saw it in the vineyard, one king pouting because he can't have what he wants, like a giant bearded toddler on a decorative couch. One queen looking at the problem and deciding that law, witnesses, letters, and death are all just tools in a box. Efficient, chilling. The worst office manager you've ever met, except with soldiers. That's why her memory stayed sharp. Jezebel came to stand for more than makeup and idols and scandal. She became the image of what happens when charm and authority get braided together and tied around somebody else's throat. She is dangerous, not because she is glamorous, but because she knows how to use systems, ceremonies, signatures, and fear. She knows how to make violence look official. That terrified people then, and it still does now. But even at the window, all painted eyes and arranged hair, there was something else. Dignity, defiance, the last scrap of control in a collapsing world. That detail matters. It's part of why she lasted in memory so stubbornly. People did not forget her because she was simple. They remembered her because she was formidable. Monstrous in some moments, yes, but never flimsy, never forgettable. She looked down from the window as if even death should have the courtesy to announce itself first. Then there's Delilah, sitting in that house in the valley of Sorek, while Samson blunders around like a wrecking ball with opinions. Her story settled into memory as a warning about desire mixed with foolishness. Not desire by itself, desire with your guard down. Desire while secrets are leaking out of you because you want to be admired, soothed, touched, flattered. Desire while you're telling yourself this is still a game. Samson does that over and over, which would be funny if it were not also excruciating. She asks where his strength comes from, and he basically responds like a man opening his banking app in a crowded tavern. Terrible plan. So Delilah became the name attached to seduction with a price tag. The soft voice with an invoice behind it. The hand in your hair while somebody waits in the next room. But the deeper warning is not really women are dangerous, though plenty of people lazily turned it into that. The deeper warning is that vulnerability is holy and risky at the same time. Give your secret to the wrong lap, and you may wake up with your life in pieces on the floor. That is the sort of thing nobody in the valley forgets. She stands for betrayal that feels intimate, not the enemy crashing through the gate. Worse, the enemy already sitting across from you, asking sweetly one more time while you grin like a fool and think you're in control. And then, Salome, or the girl at the banquet, if you want to keep her half hidden the way memory often does. She carries the horror of a room full of powerful men, treating a girl's body, a ruler's ego, and a prophet's life as parts of the same party trick. That is the part people keep passing along when her name comes up later. Not just the dance, the whole disgusting machinery around it, the wine-heavy boasting, the performance, the oath nobody should have made, the cowardice that would rather kill a righteous man than look weak in front of dinner guests with grease on their beards. It is one of the grimmest scenes in the whole collection because it shows how violence can arrive on a platter, polished and practical. Salome became forbidden because she stood where beauty, family ambition, and public brutality all collided. And that matters because she reminds you that sometimes the most terrible acts happen in decorated rooms, not battlefields, banquet halls, places with music, places with roasted meat and laughter and servants trying not to make eye contact. Evil is not always a screaming mob. Sometimes it is excellent catering and a deeply stupid promise. So when you put these women together, the meaning settles in. They became forbidden figures because each one held a fear people could not stop returning to. Lilith held the fear of helpless loss. Jezebel held the fear of power without conscience. Delilah held the fear of intimacy turned lethal. Salome held the fear of desire performed for an audience and paid for in blood. And over time, their names grew larger than their bodies. That is the important part to end on. These women were remembered not only for what they did or were said to do, but for what communities needed them to represent. Motherhood under threat, beauty under suspicion, female influence treated as dangerous, desire treated as combustible, blame, always blame, clinging to women the way smoke clings to wool, sometimes fairly, sometimes wildly unfairly. That's part of the ache in all of this. These names became containers. People stuffed into them their terror of death, sex, foreignness, manipulation, shame, and social collapse. Once that happens, a person stops being just a person in memory. She becomes a warning sign nailed to the road, crooked, weather-beaten, impossible to miss. And yet, that is not the whole feeling left behind. Because these stories also preserve something true about the world people lived in. Desire can cloud judgment. Power can become predatory. Vulnerability can be exploited. Grief can become superstition. Public spectacle can turn cruel with shocking speed. Those dangers were real. They are still real. That is why the names lasted. They kept hold of genuine human fears, even as retellings piled on perfume, dust, and extra scandal. So by the end of the journey, the closure is not that these women were monsters, and that's that. Too tidy, too cheap. It's that they became mirrors for the dangers people felt around them every day. The crib in the dark, the palace seal on a death order, the lover asking one question too many, the ruler swearing too much after too much wine. Those images stayed because they were useful, memorable, sharp enough to survive centuries of retelling, and once a name becomes a warning, it rarely gets to rest. Still, the names endured. Through sermons and gossip, through nursery fears and political insults, through muttered accusations and dramatic retellings, by people who absolutely would have loved being the center of attention themselves. The women remained, not safe, not simple, but unforgettable. And in that long remembering, their shadows kept moving long after the lamps burned out. Now the night grows quieter, and only the names seem to remain around you, not the bodies. Those went the way all bodies go, wrapped, buried, burned, scattered, eaten by time, argued over by descendants, and finally lost beneath dirt, brick dust, weeds, and the general untidiness of history. But the names, those are stubborn. You can feel the world emptying around them. The banquet hall has gone first, cups tipped over, wine drying sticky on the table, grease going pale on platters nobody bothered to scrape clean. The torches have burned down to ugly little stubs. Smoke clings to the rafters. Somewhere in the dark, a servant is still dealing with the aftermath, which feels rude, honestly. You step into the corridor. It is cooler here, quieter. The air smells of lamp oil, old stone, and that faint iron note that never quite leaves a place once blood has made an appearance. Sandals scuff somewhere far away. A door opens, then shuts. Whatever panic filled these rooms earlier has thinned into whispers. Salome lingers there, not in the flesh, in memory. In that awful moment when a room full of powerful men turned a girl into an errand and called it entertainment. The music ended centuries ago. The platter is gone. The oath is dust. But her name still arrives with a rustle of silk and a cold little turn in the stomach. Then the palace falls behind you, too. Stairs, courtyard, gate, night air. The city outside is never truly silent, but it has settled into its lower register now. Dogs bark once and then think better of it. Someone coughs behind a wall. A baby lets out one outraged shriek, then is hurried back towards sleep. The smell is the usual urban blend of ash, dung, cooling bread ovens, and drains that have seen things no drain should see. You walk on. Somewhere ahead, another woman waits beside a window high above the street. You do not hear chariots now. You hear wind rubbing against old stones. The paint around her eyes has long since vanished. The hairpins are gone. The dogs are dust. Even the palace that held her arrogance together is cracked open, its walls split by roots and weather and centuries of nobody paying for repairs. Jezebel remains anyway. You can almost still see her there, framed against the opening, looking down with that final, impossible refusal to look small. Everyone wanted her reduced, flattened, made into a lesson with no perfume left in it. Yet even now she stays vivid, painted eyes, lifted chin, a woman at the edge of disaster still choosing presentation. It is the ancient version of showing up impeccably dressed while your entire life is on fire. And the fire passed. The walls came down, ivory split, cedar rotted. Dust walked in and claimed the place room by room. Lizards took over. Thorn bushes moved into the courtyard like freeloading cousins. Rain found every crack. Still her name kept traveling, mouth to mouth, century to century, never clean, never small. Then the road bends away from the city. You are out in the borderlands again, where the air holds the day's heat long after sunset. Dry grass rasps against your ankles. Crickets go about their business with that relentless, tiny confidence only insects possess. Somewhere a sleeping flock stirs, releasing the thick barnyard smell of wool, droppings, and warm animal breath. Delilah lives here now, not in a house. That house is gone. The low table is gone. The bedding is gone. The silver paid into eager hands has been melted, spent, stolen, or buried by somebody who definitely forgot where they put it. The shears rusted away a very long time ago. Still you can feel the room, the weight of a head in a lap, the dangerous softness of a voice asking one more question. The lazy confidence of a man who thinks betrayal always announces itself with trumpets, paperwork, and a villainous speech. Instead, it comes quietly. A hand in your hair, a tired body, a small metal sound in the dark. Honestly, it is the worst spa treatment in human memory. That moment remains because people know that feeling, the laugh before the consequences land, the flirtation that should have been treated like a house fire but got treated like a game, the split second when confidence drains out of a person and leaves them ordinary. Delilah's house fell away. Her valley changed hands. New feet wore paths through old dust. But her name stayed attached to the cut. And now even that heat begins to fade. The road gives way to older fears, smaller spaces, a doorway covered with a hanging cloth, a mud brick room where the lamp flame trembles each time the night air sneaks through. A mother sits awake though her eyes burn. A baby whimpers. Shadows shift across the wall in shapes your tired mind absolutely does not need right now. Lilith waits in that darkness, not as a queen, not as a courtesan, not as a famous beauty in a dangerous room. She comes as breath on the edge of sleep, as the thing people blame when grief enters a house too small to hold it. The amulets have crumbled, the cords snapped, their painted letters flaked away. The cradle turned to splinters long ago, but the fear endured. You can feel it in the draft near the threshold, in the way a parent checks the child again, then one more time because the night is long, and mercy can feel very far away at 3 a.m. Lilith stays alive wherever exhaustion and dread share a bed. She is made of every sound that wakes you suddenly, every shadow that seems to move when it shouldn't, every terrible possibility the mind manufactures when the room is dark and the future is not promised. So the night keeps her, not clearly, never clearly, more like a rumor the dark tells itself, a name tied to wind, cradle, fever, and the unbearable fragility of things you love. You cannot bury that kind of fear neatly. It seeps through generations, and all 4 of them drift together now. A queen at a window, a woman beside a sleeping man, a girl in a banquet hall, a night figure at the edge of a cradle, different rooms, different dangers, different kinds of blame clinging to them like burrs in wool. Yet their names keep surviving the collapse of the walls around them. That is the strange part. Empires go down with tremendous noise at first, then with embarrassing silence. One year there are officials, guards, taxes, decrees, imported cedar, polished stone, and very serious men explaining everything. A few centuries later, there is a goat standing where the throne room used to be, chewing with vacant commitment and improving nothing. Time is ruthless like that. But names can slip through. They travel lighter than stone. They fit in a whisper, a warning, a muttered insult, a fearful bedtime prayer, a piece of gossip by the oven, a caution hissed from mother to daughter. They do not need palaces. They do not need records. They live in mouths. You have heard that all night, the way a name can become larger than a person ever was, thicker, stranger, covered in other people's fear, desire, resentment, and imagination until the original face is almost impossible to recover. By then, it hardly matters. The name has taken on a second life, and second lives can be very long. The lamps burn lower. In one house, the wick bends and drowns itself in oil. In another, A servant pinches the flame between wetted fingers. Courtyards empty. Dishes sit unwashed. Sand cools. Perfume fades off skin. Musicians sleep. Guards lean on spears and stare into nowhere. Children stop fussing. Even the dogs curl up at last. And still the names remain. Jezebel in the broken window. Delilah in the silence after the cut. Salome in the corridor where the platter passed. Lilith in the thin, dark air above the cradle. You do not need to force them to stay. They know how. They have been carried too long already, through ruined capitals and poor villages, through sermons and gossip, through nursery fears and political insults, through paintings, accusations, mutters, and stories told by firelight, when the room has gone dim and nobody wants to admit how much old names can still unsettle them. Outside, the night keeps stretching over everything. Over cracked palace stones, over abandoned roads, over vineyards gone wild, over fields where nobody remembers the old boundaries, over roofs patched with straw and mud, over sleeping animals with their twitching ears and grassy breath, over mothers, kings, servants, widows, liars, lovers, prophets, and children who will inherit stories older than the walls around them. The women themselves are gone. The fear is not quite gone. The fascination is not quite gone either. Human beings are consistent that way. Show them a forbidden name, and they will carry it for centuries like a hot coal wrapped in cloth, complaining all the while that it burns. So the hall's empty, the paint flakes, the shears rust, the music dies, the cradle stills, and the names go on. Quieter now, worn smooth by repetition, half history, half warning, half nightmare, and somehow still more than the arithmetic should allow. They pass from lip to lip, age to age, long after the hands that adorned, betrayed, danced, or frightened have fallen still. And somewhere in the dark, where the last lamp trembles and finally gutters, they endure.